Well, 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 well.
Well.
It's
Three
funny.
holes in the ground.
I really was three. Did you say three holes in the ground?
Yep.
That's what my
Well,
sister says.
well, yeah, you always say. You always say that though.
It, you're right. Now that
I
you put a
listen.
spotlight on it, oh my god.
Yes.
Well,
Your
well, well.
sister says it's. That's where you got that. Your sister says it.
No, I always say well, 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 and then
Ah,
she says,
three
"Well,
holes in the ground.
three holes in the ground." Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
And
that's where you got it then.
I do have to admit, the first few times she said it, I didn't get it. And usually,
Ah.
I don't know if our viewers are aware of it, but this guy's typically very on the ball. Typically
You
gets things very quickly.
You are. Yeah. Sometimes.
Right? But she said it, and I was like, oh, I finally got it.
Yeah.
Because I say well, well, well.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I think that we get into the habit of just saying things on like autopilot, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, dude, how's it going?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't care how they're doing. You're just
it's called
words.
heuristics.
What's it called?
It's called heuristics.
Heuristics.
Heuristics. It's a your brain's way of shortcutting.
Oh,
there's 20 different heuristics, and they're all to do with a shortcut for your brain. It's an interesting concept actually. There's a really good book on it about heuristics. Yeah. It's kind of it's also the reason why like professional skiers die in avalanches more than non-professional skiers, because
this took a left turn. Yes.
Yeah. No, well, it's like it's shortcuts that you overlook things, or like even though you're a professional.
Yes.
And it's specific. It's actually specific to skiers and avalanches, and the author didn't explain why, but it's common. It's or like professional or experienced boaters drown more often than non because of heuristics.
Heuristics is a mental shortcut that can facilitate problem solving and probability judgments. These strategies are generalizations or rule of thumb, reduce cognitive load, and can be effective for making immediate judgments. However, they often result in irrational and inaccurate conclusions.
Yeah. And apparently like law enforcement officers suffer from it a lot. And then also too, there's a really good book called Before Happiness by a guy named Sean Aker, who talks about heuristics, and that there's a the Yale Medical School, actually the resident prof there actually has doctors in that pre-med course take art history and art perspectives.
Yes.
And he just basically takes them to all the museums around the campus, and they look at art from different perspectives. And what it does is it subdues the heuristic factor, and your cognition becomes a little bit more elevated. And so doctors from that specific grad, from that school, from that course, have 15 to 20% more success as far as like medical mistakes. They don't make as many, because their brain has been trained to while it will accept a heuristic, they will still actually question. And there's a really he cites a famous example in New York of one of the doctors that passed that course with flying colors apparently, and a kid came in with blue around the mouth, and everyone assumed he was choking.
Yes.
And as it turns out, it was a rare disorder that only 99 or like 0.99% of the people in the world suffer from.
Right.
And it was one tiny thing that he said, nope, something's not right. He's not choking, even though he looked like he might have been choking. It was, it's phenomenal. It
kind of dislodges normality, if that makes sense, I guess, right?
Yeah. It gets, I even tried after reading the book, or it's actually an audiobook, but after listening
Cheater.
Yeah, I know.
That's fine.
Not good with reading these days, but
I'm married to a librarian, remember? So
I know.
But
sorry, has a lot of clothes.
That's true.
But yeah, no, I actually grabbed some books from the library, and even like Sean says, like, grab some really good like art books, and like literally he said put them on a counter or on the floor, and then and go look at them from different angles at different times of the day. And that's the other thing too, is when you're hungry, you're less apt to be positive because you're dealing with the frontal cortex, which is survival, versus your artistic mind, which is back here. So when you're hungry, you're more in survival. And so you're going to be less led to look at artistic things. And so I did this example, and I found, he said, think or write down how many things you see the first time, the second time. Man, I looked at this bloody thing 10 times, and by the time the 10th time, I found no less than 3 more things in that painting that I didn't see in the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like fucking mind blowing.
I wonder if it's topical for tonight, especially with our guest in regards to mixing music and right?
Our guest. I've been excited by some guests. I mean, when I did Cobham and interviewed him, that was exciting, and Weckl and all those guys.
Yep.
But I would say this is the first guest I'm fanboying on. This is for me fucking exciting.
Wow. Everybody else boring.
Yeah, I mean
everybody else.
Okay, great. Met Liberty DeVito, sure. Piano or what do you call it? Turnstiles, sure. That's a good album. Kenny Aronoff, yeah, he's a good guy. I like Kenny a lot.
You're name dropping hard right now. You're totally name dropping.
I am, and this is why I have to say the gravity of this. This, I literally bought, and the backstory in this is I bought from Waves Audio. I bought Piper Payne's mastering course.
Yes,
and with that they gave you all these other courses that they'd had in the past, and Dave's course was demo to masters on there. And I mean, I've looked on lots of courses around audio production and engineering, and I have to say, like, this course literally, and Dave just literally takes you through. It's so simple, but it's so like it's like, oh my god, right? It's that simple. It's a set of rules you have to adhere to.
Yes.
And anyone who the ears on this guy, Dave has the biggest set of ears in the world, bar none. I mean, that might be setting the bar high, but he's got this. I literally sat with Reaper open and his course and did A-B'd everything he said, and it was just like it transformed my world, literally.
I think what I'm appreciating, and I realize that he's in the waiting room right now, about to be brought in, is that you know him extremely well, and I have to admit,
probably in an uncomfortable way.
Full disclosure, I don't know him that well.
Well, this is it. This is just
I'm
it.
super stoked to get to know him.
I actually, my wife interviewed him for her show, and I mean, that interview was amazing. But it's like, again, the reason for this show is Off the Throne. We're not necessarily talking about drumming, but we are talking about things related to drums. And the moment I took his course and just some of the stuff that Dave covers and talks about, and then just his humility, like his humbleness, like the guy. Oh, when I read you his album credits and his little bio, there's like, oh my god, jeez Louise, like it's outstanding.
Well, I'm looking forward to him name dropping hard during this session.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is he won't, Dave.
No, I'm going to ask him. I'm totally going to.
He doesn't need to.
It's going to be great.
You do have to ask him about he had the shortest ride in I think it was at Escalade with Sting. And they had a beer together. It's a good story.
Well, you're burying the lead here. Okay.
Well, I know. No, because you won't believe why. Yeah, no, it's just such a good story.
Dude, I mean,
here we go again. Like,
you built it up.
Stuff that,
it's good. And he also knows pizza.
Right? It'd probably be a shorter list of what Dave doesn't know.
Okay, well, now we built him up so much. Holy jeez. Okay.
I know, but dude, I'm telling you, I should have booked this for 5 hours. This is how long I would, or at least I could talk.
Well, spoilers. My Retrologist stream is not happening tonight.
It's not,
because we did one on Monday. We did sketch prompts on Monday night stream.
Gotcha.
We're not doing one tonight, so I got a little bit of time to hang.
Oh,
I'm at the mercy of you guys or our guest's cell phone battery.
Yeah,
nice. Okay. Well, do you want to do the old intros?
Yeah, I never do read, but I do have to read this one because I wouldn't do him a service if I did not read.
No heuristics right now.
Heuristics. No. I can't do the heuristics on this one because I'm literally nervous about this one. So with over 1,000 album credits to his name, Dave Darlington's work has touched many lives and garnered much deserved praise in the process. Whether composing and producing the soundtrack to all 6 seasons of the groundbreaking HBO series Oz, which, by the way, if you haven't watched that show, you need to. Applying his jazz skills to mix Miles at the Fillmore, Dave's work always shines. And of course, a little known fact, he's been part of the Sonic Hedgehog production team from day one. What? I mean, I'm not gonna go with all the. He's worked with Sting and Whitney Houston, but here's this winner: Best Large Ensemble Jazz Album 2023 Grammy, Stephen Feifke and Bjorn. Oh, of course, I get the hardest names right off the bat. Bjorn Watson, Generation Gap Orchestra for mixing and mastering. Winner best. These are Grammy wins. He's got
Wins.
Winner Best Large Ensemble Jazz Album 2019 Brian Lynch, the Omni American Book Club mixing and mastering. Winner Best World Music Album 2018 Soweto Gospel Choir Freedom Mastering. Winner Best Jazz Album Instrumental Album Individual or Group 2006 Brian Lynch and Eddie Palmieri Simpatico Mixing. Winner Best Jazz Instrumental Album Individual Group Wayne Shorter Algeria Mixing. Winner Best Instrumental Jazz Performance Individual Group 1998 Herbie Hancock Gershwin's World Engineer. That's just the wins. There's nominations. Without
Amazing.
further ado,
Big nobody, Dave Darlington.
Well, I better be saying something really important. That I build up.
Nope. Sean will build you up and I'll tear you down, buddy.
Okay.
It's so good.
Man,
Dave,
what a
Dave,
wind-up.
welcome to the show. Welcome to the
Thanks,
show,
guys.
man. Since I
pleasure.
downloaded that course, I have been itching to talk to you. I just, for me as a drummer, the audio production thing always seems so mystifying and so mystical, and just having your program and the way you explain things really just so simplified things for me. There wasn't, the way you presented it, in my opinion, was it wasn't this ether sort of, oh, it's just so artistic. It was just like, there's a set of rules and you got to follow them and you got to have good ears. How did those awesome ears develop? Do you
It's over a long period of time. I wouldn't want to go back and listen to my very early attempt at mixing. But you talk about rules. I mean, the main rule is like the simple, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And the simplest way to make a record is to connect less stuff and put less stuff on it later. A lot of guys just, wow, we got all these plugins and let's just do stuff. And okay, so what are you actually doing? If you're not really clear about what a plug-in or a mic pre or something like that is doing, then you're not really using it in the best way to get the best sound.
Right.
One of my heroes is an engineer named Al Schmidt. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's 23 Grammys and Frank Sinatra duets and that kind of stuff.
Wow, yeah.
And when he mixes, the guy who comes in the studio after him goes, "Hey Al, I don't see any compressors you don't have any EQs on." And he goes, "Not if I recorded it." Meaning, you get the sound if you don't like the way that it's sounding, you go move the mic or you change a mic or you figure out what is it about the room that's not sounding good. Not just like, we'll get it down and then we'll deal with all that boominess later or that shrillness later.
Right.
So that goes back to you saying, the course is about a set of rules. The first rule is take all those plugins off and let's see what we have.
Yep.
And then we'll use the plugins to fix things that are not quite right. We won't just put them on gratuitously all over the place.
I use the analogy with some engineering people that I speak to, is that a lot of the time you become paramedics, that you just record garbage and then you're like, okay, how do I revive what I recorded?
Yes, right. Which is it's not the best DNA for a record, right? Especially if you're gonna, it depends on why are you making records. A lot of people are making records nowadays to document where they are in their lives and career. There's so much music out there that anyone's chances of getting recognition is slimmer and slimmer and lucky. But so what are we really doing? Are we making this record so that our friends in the band can think we're good? That's not why I make records. There's 4 billion people on the planet. We should be able to get some of them to listen to our record.
Totally. That's up to the marketing department. Spoilers.
I don't care. I don't care about the horn players in the band, what they think, really.
Right.
But you'll be surprised when I'm working for people and mixing for people. Well, Billy said, the trombone's a little shrill. What? I'm not making this record for Billy.
Right.
Yeah. I'm making this record. You have to think of making the record for the audience. What's the audience that you're trying to hit? What do they like? What's gonna float their boat? Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if whatever it is, if it's indie rock, it's going to be a little grimy and, and cool and dark.
Mm.
Whatever genre you're in,
Right.
I kind of want to bring it back just because instantly we started touching on it. As a matter of fact, is I'm sorry, I'm going to name drop here as well. I went to recording school as well back in the late '90s, and if you know Jack Richardson, yeah. So Jack was my professor in Ontario.
Excellent. He's excellent.
Yeah, the late Jack Richardson, absolutely. So everybody goes into recording school in one way or another, wanting to be like rock stars. I want to be the biggest producer in the world and make millions of dollars.
Well, yeah.
And then everybody leaves going, oh, I really loved like piano tuning. That's what I'm going to do. Or I'm going to get into like, I don't know, law, or I'm going to get into a whole different facets. I got into editing. That was my angle of it. But I did find, I have a question at the end of this, but I did find that I was very good at editing, so much so that when I was recording my drums, my brain would just say, oh, I can fix that in the end. Don't worry, it's fine. I can fix that. I can fix it. And then I would just have sessions of work I got to do, right? Because I just prided myself on being able to edit so well.
Yeah.
But what I attribute it to, and kind of what I want you to speak about, pre-production. Pre-production right now feels like it's a lost art that us old guys kind of took time to do. And you knew right before you went in the studio any potential mistake that's going to come into play, or sonically how things were going to fit. And I find that a lot of kids these days are just throwing stuff at the wall to see if it sticks, and then, as I say,
there's a few
surgically
reasons
working
for
on
that.
it later. Yeah.
There's a few reasons for the lack of pre-production. One is that everybody's so scattered and busy that it's hard to get your band to sit in the same room for 3 hours at a time for a couple of days before you're going in the studio, especially if it's not a working band and a social band, guys that hang out. It's a little different with rock when you're in the band. But, a lot of the jazz guys going, I'm going to make my album and I'm going to get this guy and this guy and this guy, but we can't rehearse because this guy's traveling and whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then one of the other things is that everybody is self-producing.
Yes.
They very rarely ask another guy and peel off a couple of 20s to give to another guy to just listen while we record and flag anything that you think is not great. That we can avoid, we can avoid spending money later by you raising your hand and going, guys, that tempo took off like a rocket. Maybe we should do it again and try to hold it a little more steady, or whatever it might be. But the second set of ears, the producer, and when you work with a really good producer, there's so many skills involved in that it makes your job as an engineer or a drummer or an editor so much easier, because there's a guy driving the bus.
Yes.
And everybody has to stay on the bus with him because that's his job.
Yeah. And actually one of my questions here in particular had to do with how you felt about the role of a producer these days. So you're hitting all the right stuff, right?
I've been lucky enough to work with some of the really, really greatest producers, not only in New York, but all over the world. Is it time to name drop? I mean, there's been quite a few, and they all have different skill sets, but the two things they really are good at is the overview, right?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Who would be best for this? Not who's available, who would really be the best and why. And if that guy comes in and doesn't work, they'll go to plan B in a heartbeat. They're not married to these decisions because the goal is the best record or musical event that we can make.
Yeah.
And the other skill set that they all have to a person is they are, whether it's their personality or their patience or their wisdom, they are diva whisperers in the highest order.
Ooh, explain.
Because you really, your artist, your main artist, or your singer, or your Miles, the engineers will say, man, that guy's nuts, man, I can't work with him. And the producer will go, no, you actually want your artist to be nuts. That's what makes them artists.
Right.
So when they get nutty in the studio, you have to have the producer guy who goes, oh my dear, I don't think that was so bad. In fact, I love the way you did this and that. Maybe we could expand on that. And like, you're distracting the singer from the note that she just cracked and telling her how good her verse was, and that the feeling you got from the verse gave you goosebumps. And then they go, oh yeah, let's do it again. You know that's diva whispering,
Yeah.
right? And some
Even
people
was
are,
pretty nice.
I've
some
kind of
people
said
are
that
really
producers are
I-
people managers as much as their
Sure,
sound
sure.
managers. Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
You know, whether they're dealing with and whatever kind of artist they're dealing with, you know, and some artists have good BS detectors, so you can't just blow smoke, but you kind of calmly run the energy of the day to maximize their input.
Right.
You know,
Right.
some people I'm told when they come in the studio have to be in record all the time on some kind of mechanism, you know, even if it's a secondary recorder, because they might just be noodling around and do something amazing. And okay, we got it. We can build on that.
Yeah.
So they're always thinking of the big picture, and then like you're saying with the editing, they're thinking about what they can do with it later and how it's going to work, and they're not afraid to circle back if this hits a wall.
Yeah.
You know, because they in their experience, especially the older ones who've been around and done it a few times and figured it out, they know that if it's not working, you can't force it onto the album if it's not good, because then you're ruining the reason you're doing the album.
Yeah.
Right. Make less stuff, but
right.
make less stuff that's great instead of more stuff that's mediocre.
Well, I think you know as well as I do, bands go into the studio with 40, 50 songs and narrow it down to 8.
Yeah.
Over that time, things get shelved, things get moved away for more inspiration, right?
You know, there's great stories about the Beatles hashing their stuff out. When they went to Rishikesh in India, they wrote like 50 songs. And then there's demos of them working out songs that we know from the White Album that sound completely different.
Right.
Drumming away at George's house, but you hear the licks and you hear the melodies and you know, that's going to turn into a completely different song, but that's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
You know,
I was going to put up this one here.
They were in the middle period and later period of Beatles, you know, with George Martin. They were really good at the pre-production thing, but they would do it in the studio because they had gazillion dollars.
Yeah.
True. Which we do hear about bands doing
regular
lockouts.
Regular folks can just go to a $15 an hour rehearsal space if they can get everybody's head in the same place together.
But you do need an objective perspective on what you're doing, especially as a drummer. I've certainly been in sessions where my ego needs to be in check, where, you know, a producer goes, those ghost notes you're doing, don't. 2 and 4, just give me that right now. And I'm like, I'm trying to reason it, you know? And he's like, nope, please just give me that. That's all I'm looking for. I'm like, cool, sounds good. You got a vision, I'm in, you know? Yeah.
You know, I always let the artists have their say and let them work the rehearsal. What do you think? You know, some artists are really strong at that, and some are passive. You know, so the ones that are strong, you can't react negatively to that. This person really kind of knows what they want. Let's help them. You know, really, our job, all of our jobs, is to really help whoever session we're on get what they're trying to find. And it's not always apparent to us in the first place. You know, sometimes I've had records where I thought this idea is the silliest thing I ever heard of, and that vocal sounds terrible, and it ended up being big records after we massaged it for a long time.
Yeah.
I think as roles.
But my point there being, you can't poo-poo things right off the top if they don't agree with your sensibilities. You got to let it roll.
I think Sean would probably agree that, especially in the drummer's role, more often than not, correct me if I'm wrong, we're used to supporting artists so much anyways, that it's always about the person in front. It's always about the guitarist. It's always about the singer. It's always about the band situation, because, you know, we're in the back doing our thing a lot of the time.
The really great drummers are the ones that figured out how to support and then
correct
made a space for themselves. Keith Moon comes to mind.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Who plays what I would never think to play on a song, but it's always amazing.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think it also depends too on the drummer. Like, I mean, Steve Gadd is a guy that, I mean, I always remember the famous story of when he played for I think it was Paul Simon.
50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. The 50
and
Ways
he was doing the concert with Paul, and someone in the audience, I guess they knew Steve, and I was like, "Oh man, Steve, sorry, I didn't even know you were there. I was so." And he's like, "Thank you." He thanked him. He was like, "Then I did my job." And but then I think about, like, when I read lots. I mean, I'm a huge Bonham fan, and I know that John also was one of 4 people in a band, so it was a bit of a different. That's where drummers, to me, if you're part of a band, it's one thing, but then if you're, say, like a Steve Gadd or a Liberty DeVito, you're serving the band,
Yeah.
but in a different way. Whereas John was one of the artists, and
Yes.
the deeper part of that was John really understood his drums and how he wanted them to sound, and then also surrounded himself with guys like Jeff Ochiltree and some of their producers that they crafted like that. John's sound was not an accident. Bonham's sound was crafted.
That's
and
an amazing sound. Yeah.
Right. And they knew what he knew what he was after. So there's an artistry there, but then there's also the side where he said, and the book that I read about him was that Jimmy and Robert and John also gave him the room to make the mistakes. Like Fool in the Rain, he said was about 3 hours of grunting and swearing before he finally came up with
found it.
Amazing.
Yeah, and they
let
him do it.
Stuff, when where is it? I feel it coming, but we're not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's keep going. I'll go if you go.
Exactly, and that's what I think you're saying, Dave, is to allow the artist the space to create and be themselves, and just be ready to capture it when it happens. Always be on, the red light always on, I guess.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, the difference with Steve Gadd or somebody like Bernard Purdie is, they figured out how to make a good living as studio people.
Yeah.
So maybe at some point in their youth, they were in bands and they dug that, but then there's, you move in the city, it's expensive and you got sessions and it turns out you're good at that.
Yeah.
So you become that kind of a person. That's kind of what happened to me in engineering. I was originally a bass player and I had bands and lots and lots of music friends and people that I played with that I really looked up to. And then little by little, I found out I could make more of a steady living in the studio.
Right.
So it wasn't like a conscious decision, like I don't want to play bass anymore. I want to engineer, but economically it just pulled me that way. And I realized I enjoyed it just as much.
Yeah. Did you find, especially as a bass player in the session, because it certainly relates to myself as a drummer in the studio, I enjoy kind of direction. I enjoy trying to live out somebody else's vision of, like they may not be able to convey it. They're not a drummer, the producer. I've got an idea of this and this. What do you do? And I bring my palette to it, and then I can put my embellishments on it a tiny bit. But I'm really being told what to do, and I'm just trying to make that stick really well.
It's always good to have somebody who has a clear-cut direction,
Yes.
But the other side of that coin is then they have to let you do it with your expertise too.
True.
Instead they can't tell you every hi-hat, like the seventh note should be a little softer in the hi-hat.
Totally.
No, not like that. Look, I want my voice to be indie rock, or I want my voice to be Whitney Houston. Okay, well that means a certain thing to me and what effects I might use and put on it. Right. And then you have to let me decide if it's the right volume, because singer's going to listen to the singing.
Yes.
Right. Yes. The trumpet player is never going to tell you about the drum sounds. He's only going to say my trumpet's too bright and not loud enough. Nobody ever says their instrument is too loud enough.
Yeah, that's
never.
Okay.
No. My snare drum could be like cracked way too loud. Bring it up.
Are we making
10 more
the
dB.
For your trumpet teacher, or are we trying to make a record that everybody likes? What are we
doing? It does hearken to what you were saying before about self-production, because it's very obvious a lot of the time when I hear somebody's recording and the guitars are blazing loud. I'm like, oh, you're a guitarist. Cool.
You're the guitar player, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's neat. Yeah. You're a singer and you got GarageBand. Nice.
But then when you really start to analyze successful records, like if you're in my position, you listen to those, pick Stevie Winwood, you too, like listen to those mixes.
Yeah.
The vocals are not like really wailing out front. The vocals are surrounded in a great way, but that the engineer is so good at, making the vocal be clear and understandable, but having the music is what gets us off besides the song, right?
Can't agree more. Yeah.
And I remember you mentioning this before, Dave, that it was one thing to be able to mix instrumentals, but then, what separates the masters from, the amateurs is to mix a vocal track into that. I mean,
vocals are kind of the last hurdle. You can get a good vocal sound and everything, but we have to we compress them a little bit to make them sit, but then you have to do rides. You also have to work the arc of the tune, right? Like the verse is dry and intimate, and then the pre-chorus starts to get a little, effecty, and then by the big chorus, there's a great video of mixing Adele, Tom Earlman, who talks about they gave him everything that he needed, and his first thought was, let me not screw this up.
Yeah.
And then he said, you know, he does that, so he puts a little something on the pre-chorus, and then his thing was an eighth note delay going into the Grand Canyon reverb. So you know, it's bada, but the ah is ba.
Yeah, wet.
And that goes on the chorus.
Right.
So you get that arena sound of ba ba, and then shh, Niagara Falls.
Right.
And it's Adele, 8
Yeah.
bazillion records later.
People have you, and then pulls it right back for the verse.
And then pulls it right back for the verse, right?
Familiarity kicks back in.
If you watch the video, it's a great video. That's all I have. I have these two things, and you watch him push it, or he just, you know, turns it on at the right moment with the automation on an analog board, and yep, sure enough, the B section's bigger than the verse. Bang, that chorus, wow, slamming.
Yeah,
and that's really in a microcosm what any engineer would do on a pop type record of, like, you know, it might not be those exact same things, but it's some kind of build, structural build.
Yes.
Yeah.
The payoff.
Yeah. When I was watching your chorus, Dave, and I mean, by this was, I mean, it was so amazing how you simplified everything in a way that I felt I was able to follow. Number one, you were using the lingo, but it was lingo that to me was I mean, you have to have a level of understanding, but
there's a certain lexicon of stuff. That, you know, if you have a wedding band and you run the PA, you're going to know the things we're talking about. Right?
That's right.
Well done.
That's
well done.
Exactly.
You know, signal flow, microphone, mic, amplifier, tape, speakers. Right?
Yeah.
When you listen to albums, or if you say you've listened to someone who's recorded drums, what are some of the more, you know, biggest mistakes you hear, or the most common misconceptions I think that you might bust about either mixing drums or recording drums?
Well, I mean, of course, now that we have so many channels, one of the biggest things that's going on is too many mics. Or not too many mics, but too many mics not being used in the right way.
Gotcha.
Right. So that, you know, the thing about, I'm sure you're familiar with toms above and toms below, and that kind of stuff, but that's all fine because then you have options later. But the main thing is that those mics have to be, all those 18 mics on the drums have to be pushing the speakers forward at the same time. So if you have a mic that's really close to the snare drum, right? You hit the snare drum, that mic gets that sound immediately. The tom-tom mics get that sound 8 milliseconds later. The overhead mics get it 16 milliseconds later. So what's going on here? We're getting we're getting a comb filter of that snare drum if we have 18 mics. If we just have a mono mic on the kit, bam, we get that snare drum. Okay, so that's not going to be great for cymbals, and now we don't have any toms or kick drum or anything. So we need the multiple mics, but we need them time aligned.
Okay.
Right. So Pro Tools and all the DAWs have had stock plugins, you know, called time adjustments.
Yes.
But they've always been by ear. You know, okay, let's move it, and that feels better. You know, 15 or whatever. And now there's a plugin called Auto Align that uses AI and it measures. So you make some set of mics the boss, which in my case, if I'm doing a stereo overheads like this, or even if I'm doing a split overheads, I'll put them on a stereo fader, and that will be the boss. So we're sending from that, and then you put the receivers on all the other drums, and it slides the transients together, and just like the underneath the snare would be out of phase because the snare is moving down. So you don't have to, if you didn't do that when you recorded, it'll know that, and it's this wave is going the opposite direction of the so it flips it for you.
Oh, it automatically flips
you
it out of phase.
You just go to where the guy's playing a bunch of toms and stuff, and let it think. And boom. And so then after I've done that, I turn it on and off. I A/B it, and it's just the difference between this kind of a drum set and this kind of a drum set.
Right.
It's subtle, but it's it's like the good camera on your phone, you know, as opposed to the backside camera, which is not as. It's like, wow, it's so clear.
Yeah.
And then
Resolution,
you're getting what the guy really played, how he tuned, you know, and how he hit,
Yes.
which is another. That's a big deal. I'm sure you guys as drummers,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
the guys that can really tune for studio.
Yeah.
And a lot of the problems that you have to fix in the mix. I think this is in my course where I raise the EQ.
Yeah.
We go up and down, and we hear the
whole
going. We hear that going
Yep.
on the snare,
Yeah.
which might be like two frequencies here and there.
Yeah.
And then you get those out. It's like, oh, it sounds so much nicer.
Totally.
Yep.
I was going to harken back to what you were saying, though. I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes when you got 20 mics on, correct me if I'm wrong, you could just use 2 mics of those 20.
Yeah.
You don't need to use all 20 for the mix.
No.
So, but I guess it's nice to have an array of sounds, but I do feel like people, when they set up a microphone, feel obligated to use it.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
you know, I just did a record today, which was 2 pairs of overheads, which actually was fine. You know, a set of ribbons and a set of condensers, and they both had something, but I still had to align them to each other, even though they're both overheads. You know, they were 2 or 3 samples off from each other.
Right.
And also, you know, I'm not really an electrical engineer in terms of, you know, circuitry and stuff like that, but I do know that the physical properties of microphones vary. Like a ribbon microphone, the way it transduces sound is different from a dynamic and different from a condenser. So even if you put the 2 of them side by side, which is common now on horns, saxophone.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you think about a saxophone, if you've ever sat in front of a saxophone, all the notes come out from different places on the horn.
Correct. Yeah.
This B flat shoots out over here and this C shoots out over there. So what's happening with these 2 mics is, and even worse, if you put a stereo mic, which, this will be great, we'll record the sax in stereo. Now my sax is going like this.
Wow. Yeah. I'd never considered that. That's brilliant.
So I always tell people, you know, this is my famous line. It's like, you ever seen that picture of John Coltrane with all those 5 microphones? And no, I never saw that. Me neither.
Dude, yes. I think you'll resonate with this.
That's right.
Back in school, one of the classes was we'd set up microphones, mic all the drums, make it sound good. As a class, you're left alone. You're good to go. We set up, like, of course, we were arrogant idiots. We were like, 30 microphones. It's going to sound amazing.
We'll get the room and then far
totally.
room.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Room next door.
100%. But we set up all these mics, and the professor came back in, and he was like, "Oh, it sounds pretty good. Everybody leave for 20 minutes and come back." And when we came back, it sounded so good. It sounded amazing.
And you looked?
And he showed us. It was 1 microphone through the back emergency exit up some stairs.
Wow.
1 microphone. The patch bay was completely filled. He'd used every he'd made that 1 microphone sound so amazing.
Wow.
But that was the lesson. Less is more a lot of the time, right?
So when I first started,
when
I first started in the studio, you know, I ran this kind of MIDI room, and I knew how to get all the MIDI gear onto tape and everything. So people would sometimes come in with their own engineer who was on the project, and they would come in to do MIDI overdubs or whatever. Yeah. And there was a guy named Steve Goldman who would let me set up the rough mix for the day. Okay, we're going to work on this song, get the tape, line up the tape machine. Yeah. Now Dave, you make the rough mix, I'm making coffee. And he would come back, and I'd have all this stuff plugged in, and he would go, "Well, what are you doing there?" Well, I put the flanger on the guitar, and I put the chorus on the piano, and then I put a compressor. He goes, "Dave, you should be able to push those faders up and make a really good radio sounding rough mix with 1 reverb and 1 delay."
Yeah.
And I would be, "No, Steve, look, we got racks. We got stuff. We got stuff we can do."
Yeah.
But Dave, we're here to do overdubs, but they want to be excited when they come in and they hear this record, and they want to be inspired to do their overdubs. They don't care about your chorus on the piano. They don't.
Right.
They just want to hear that song come on and be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we, you know, and that you know, there's these nuggets along the way that guys that are older than you let you know, like the thing about the vocals was a producer named Nick Martinelli, and
Yeah.
He said, I did a record with him, and when it came out in the air, it sort of sounded like my mix, but somehow a little better. And I said, Nick, was that my mix? He goes, yeah, that's your mix. We kept your automation and everything, but I had my normal guy that I always use follow you for only an hour and ride the vocals. And he's the guy that said, when you can put the vocal in a record where it belongs, so it plays anywhere in the world and it's right.
Yes.
That's when you're a mixer.
That's your mixer. Yeah.
So you go, ow, that hurt. But it made you can either quit or you can go, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. And
The call to rise. I know Kenny Aronoff talks about that when he first tried out for John. He didn't cut it, and they said, no, I think we're going to go. And Kenny was like, no way. I drove all the way here. I'm not leaving. He said, I'll sleep in the studio and practice. Just give me one more shot. And that's what he did.
Wow.
And he said like it hurt. It hurt that he had tried so hard, but
he's I've mixed some stuff that he's played. He records at home.
Yeah.
Great.
That's why I think like there is only probably 5 drummers in the world that really are first call. Abel Boreal Jr. is one of them. Kenny.
Oh my God.
Another one.
Yes.
And there's a reason those guys are first call.
Yeah. And part of that is personality too.
Yeah. Totally.
They're smiley guys. Both.
Yeah.
When you see Abe play, he's like, this is I love it.
Can you be in the studio with somebody for 2 weeks straight? Doing drums and not want to end the session early.
Right.
Exactly right.
That's right.
Personality is a big part of our business, and a lot of wonderful musicians that I know in my past, are not really doing it now, kind of because of that. They either felt that they deserved more, deserved more than what they got, and were bitter about it, or just didn't, I don't know, pay the dues. Be there and be quiet and learn and wait for the door to open to the next step.
I'm going to deviate a little bit, Dave, but this question has been on my mind since the lesson, and you talked about, and this was it was funny, it was the smallest thing I think, but it was one of the biggest moves for me forward, and that was kind of cleaning out and notching out some of the frequencies. And you talked about notching out that under 50 hertz, which is inaudible anyway. And sometimes
most things, except
right? And that how there's an energy that builds up when you start stacking tracks. If you don't do that you can't necessarily make out, but it does affect the mix. My question to you is, I started sort of playing around with that, and I'm like, so now could you run that as an aux channel to do that to every single channel, or should you do that on every channel?
Well, you don't have to do it on every channel, but it's good to know what's going on each channel. You have to familiarize. Okay. So think about an electric guitar, right? And that you're kind of getting some low mid stuff, right? Like below middle C on the piano. That's where the guitar lives.
Right.
But when he plucks that string, especially if it's going through an amp or a big amp, there's a thump of almost like a foot stomp at the beginning of that note. So that's not helping your tom fills.
Totally.
Right.
A lot of sympathetic frequencies that are happening there.
Really part of, if it's a solo guitar, maybe you let that back in if there's a break or something, so you get that full power. But in the middle of a big rhythm section thing, too much of that just turns into mud down there. And you think about all those low frequencies coagulating down there, and they're not lined up.
No.
Not only are they all down there, but they're not organized.
Yeah. It's just kind of pandemonium
pandemonium down there, and it's like, okay, why don't I feel the kick the way I want to?
Yeah.
If you think about a record like Uptown Funk, if you think, oh man, the drums are cracking.
Yeah.
They're actually not that loud.
Right.
When you go and listen to it,
Agreed, right?
But everything knits together so well.
Yeah.
Prince was good at that stuff, like leaving space for things to be, and so that the kick would hit you in the chest, and the snare would crack, but there'd be plenty of room for bass, thumb bass.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
I'm a big fan of negative space that way.
Yes.
It gives more impact and intention to all the other notes.
I'd rather have 4 good parts than 40
Totally.
parts that are fighting each other.
Yeah.
You know, the wall, there's the wall of sound thing. I get it. You know, it's 12 acoustic guitars strumming. That's a kind of a sound, a wash of a sound.
Yeah.
But modern things, you know, even like TV and film music, you know, there's a lot of inputs sometimes, if it's especially if it's an orchestral score. But the trick to mixing that is keeping things out of each other's way, like not letting it build up too much.
I think a culprit to that, correct me, reaffirm, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm using terrible vocabulary today. Is as drummers, a lot of the time we've got like 24-inch bass drums we're bringing in, and we're going, oh, I love this oak 24-inch bass drum. It's mine. It sounds amazing. Totally. And it's just way too much for the session, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is all you need was a nice 20-inch birch filled with laundry is the right answer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I always, in particular, I usually choose my cymbals or the session that I'm doing based upon what does the bass player bring into the session, so that I know my bass drum is going to communicate potentially well with whatever he's doing.
Correct.
If it's a metal thing or a rock thing, if I'm crash riding on something, I want to know that crash cymbal is going to communicate well with whatever guitar tone is kind of happening.
Totally.
I'm cognizant of those things, and I try to be cognizant of those things, but I think that a lot of people are not. So it puts your job even more when it gets tracked down, and now you got to mix it, and you go, oh my God, that bass drum's out of control. Who the hell brought a 26-inch bass drum to this session?
Well, you get, you know, guys that are thinking like that, when I end up working with them, I'm like, oh man, it's no wonder this guy's so, you know, so well loved.
Right.
You know, who people in New York, people that come to mind are like Sean Pelton.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Who just tunes the drums the right way, plays the right stuff. Omar Hakim is another one. You know, their tuning is so impeccable.
Right.
Yeah, and then what they play is impeccable too. It's a two-parter, right?
Yeah.
And we're not afraid to move the pillow around in the bass drum. Okay, let's pull it out a little and see. Oh yeah, that's better. You know, we don't want it completely dead maybe in this instance, right?
Right.
But it's like what you said, or you know, maybe we blanket. You ever done the thing where you put a shell of a bass drum a couple feet out? And then put a blanket and make a tunnel.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a rock thing, you know. That's a Bill Whitman special. He taught me that. And
I have to admit, I've done a couple sessions where they've done that, and then in the end, they just ended up not using it. But it was a great idea in the beginning.
It depends on what else.
Totally.
Is going on.
I'm like, oh, what's going on here? The first time, I'm like, oh, this sounds exciting.
Yeah, I think.
I see.
That's how Bob Rock exclusively has done a lot of like Metallica and a couple other albums. He exclusively did that tunnel,
especially for that genre, right? It's good for that.
Yeah,
and nowadays, you know, the triggering thing is so easy now. It used to be very difficult. You know, it would be a rack mount thing that costs $2 or $3 grand, and you could only trigger one thing, and you had to make sure that it was firing correctly all the time, well into the night.
Right.
Well, K2000 of some kind.
Now you put on Drumagog or Slate Trigger or And boom,
so. I would say, Dave, then, like, and I know, I know a lot of listeners. There's a lot, and myself included. I use MIDI drums a lot. In this day and age, it's really hard to find. Like, I mean, even my kit's outfitted with a bunch of mesh pads and stuff. But one of the things that I think MIDI has kind of taught me too is that, like, the good thing about the MIDI programs is that there are masters. I mean, we talked about Chris Lordalge ahead of the stream here, and I mean, these are some of the guys that are recording these drums in the drum rooms and these sounds and rooms now that don't even exist anymore, like Electric Ladyland Studios and stuff. But I guess my question then is say someone does, a young player gets the opportunity to head over into a studio. What is like 3 of the best pieces of advice you could give just around, like, even just like setting up, size of drums, what are some decisions they can make to walk in and go, really good choice, man, really good choice?
Well, a lot of the places you're talking about have kits there, so there's a lot of choices. But I always encourage everybody to bring snare and cymbals.
Okay.
Or 2 snares and a cymbal. In New York, it's a pain in the butt. You got to get in an Uber. But if you have a double snare shoulder bag and a cymbal shoulder bag, and your stick bag, you're pretty covered,
Yeah.
And we, like you were saying, pick the cymbals that are going to match and stuff like that. And then a place like what's called Power Station Berkeley now, which for a while was Avatar, in the old days was power station. They had a basement full of drums. So
Wow.
if the 24 wasn't working, you could go downstairs. If the Gretsch wasn't working, you could get a Slingerland because they had them downstairs, you know.
Right.
Another friend of mine, Will Schillinger, has a place called Pilot, which he moved from New York City into the Berkshires, and he had a shelf going around the live room of snares, hundreds of snares, just because, you know, he was a collector.
As drummers, sorry to say, that's our character. We can tell the snare sound.
Snares and Black Beauties and old stuff, and new stuff.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that would be, you know, at least have your options roadworthy so you can get in a cab and get there with some choices, right?
Right.
And the second thing is to be early.
Yeah.
Right? Because the drums take the longest to set up.
True.
Yeah.
Right. So and they're also the hardest to position the mic. So, you know, the saxophone, you stick it in front of them, you know, can you still see your music? Can you see the drummer? Great. Then the mic's cool. The drums, we have all those mics, and you know, you don't want the mics to get hit, so you can't shove them in there too much. And with all the hardware and stuff, you have to figure out the angle you're going to dig in there to get the snare.
Right.
Dave, that's where you're wrong, buddy. I expect the drums set up and ready to go when I show up to the session.
Your drum guy.
Yeah. My tech had better have it all good to go when I show up.
Well, you know, a place like Power Station or Electric Lady or someplace like that, they'll have the assistants.
True.
One of the assistants knows enough about backline to sort of get things in place, but everybody sets their stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, you got to set the height of the hi-hat and the throne and everything like that. So I would have all the mics set up, and, you know, an hour before anybody was due in, which is 2 hours before the downbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, you know, usually guys filter in an hour or so before, but I'm always hoping the drummer comes even a little sooner.
Soon. Okay. Yeah.
So that he can just maybe let him play and warm up. And so I've got while he's getting himself situated, I'm getting the mics pretty set up. And the assistant in the control room is kind of getting the levels on the mic priest, so that by the time he's ready to do some rolls and go around, do you want to get sounds? We're not doing this kick drum for 5 hours.
Right.
You know, nothing sucks the life out of a party like one drum at a time.
Jeez Louise, yeah.
You know, if you have a good guy who tunes well and his stuff is together, and then you kind of know the mics you like and kind of where to put them and kind of how to set them, you don't have to hit the kick drum for an hour to get a kick down. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Really?
But that's when I have my beer in my hand and I'm just doing one hand for the next 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's more important to get good music, really.
Totally.
That's right.
Not that we don't care about the drum sound, but we don't want to kill the guy at 11 a.m. so that by 1 o'clock he's pissed off.
Right. Yeah. All the energy just checking the drums.
Yeah. No way.
Left. There's one of the other thing that.
Before we move on, that's number 2. What was number 3?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Number 3 is when he's warming up. And this I learned from Antonio Sanchez, who has a million mics on a million drums.
He's pretty good.
He's okay.
Yeah.
So while he's doing his warm-ups and everything, we record it before nobody's there yet, right? So that he can come into the control room and, you know, we would discover, you know, okay, so the upside down China, not really getting that. So we move the overhead over, or we put a specific mic on, like a splash or something, because he's so tuned into, there's so many drums and so many cymbals and tones that that's his DNA. It's not my DNA. I'm only here. I'm hearing it and going, what do you think, Antonio?
Yeah.
So he comes in and you know, then he becomes my partner in figuring out what we need to do next. So then by the time the rest of the guys come in, he's cool now because he knows we spent that time. Yeah. So that would be, that would be my third thing. So have your options with you, come early. And then let's do a little dry run so that you and I know that we think we got it as good as we're going to get it. And we don't have to take the other guy's time, who if they're worrying about their charts, you know, the babysitter didn't show up, whatever they are, whatever's on their plate.
Right.
We're not dealing with 20 drum mics.
On the shoulders of that, sorry, Sean, I just want to interject here. On the shoulders of what you just said about like coming in and listening to it, are you typically, I kind of know the answer to this, but are you typically doing a lot of spatial, like are you panning things?
I pan it like I would be looking at it, unless the drummer wants it, and I pan it into the headphones the opposite way. So that in the headphones, you go around the kit, the floor tom's on your right.
Yep.
When you come in the control room, the floor tom's on your left.
You got
Okay,
it.
gotcha.
But
That's
you're
how.
doing that.
And
Yeah.
if it's a drummer's record, sometimes they want me to change that, which I'm okay
Mm.
with that. You know, if you listen to 50 records, 25 will be one way and 25 will be the
Yeah.
other way. But
Yeah.
usually the ones that are audience are produced by audience producers, and the ones that are drummers' perspective are produced by drummers.
You could totally hear that. You could 100%. I could totally hear that.
Yeah.
I just think about that just in regards to exactly what you said. If if that China's not coming through, that floor tom's coming through, you can get lots of phasing if you're just like, here's faders up, here you go.
Especially
But
like
you do have to take time to pan, right? And
somebody of that nature who's it's not just a crash and a ride. I mean, he's a colorful guy.
Yeah.
So he wants to hear the little 6-inch splash the same as the 22 upside down.
Right.
They got to be
well
equal.
said.
Yeah.
Wow, we can't have 24 cymbal mics.
Yep.
Right.
So, but we got to figure it. We got to figure it out, and you know, that was a really good lesson and fun actually too, because he's like, I'm not mad or anything. We're just working through this and figuring it out.
Yeah.
It's kind of like brothers in arms in the trenches, you know, like let's get to the best thing we can get to, like that.
Yeah, exactly. And the one of the big takeaways I took from your course, Dave, is especially not just mixing, but now even into my own, is like you said, like don't just start throwing spitballs at the wall to see if it sticks. It was like you literally have to know your gear, your instrument, like you know what the reverb's for, or know what the delay does. Like don't just I wonder if that would sound like,
because now that all the softwares have the the plug-in chain of like rock vocals, and then but rock vocals for who? Is that going to turn Tiny Tim into a rock vocalist? I don't think.
Sean, you hit it on the head there, is that there's a lot of modern producers, I'm going to say modern producers, who are self-producers that don't have the vocabulary to understand what they're doing. So to have rock vocals, they don't know what it's doing, but it is doing something. So now when you're trying to vocalize to something, you get moved into another studio and you're like, this is the type of tone I was working with. It was rock vocal number 1 I used in GarageBand, and they're like, I don't know what that means at all. Right. I think the vocabulary, to harken back to what we were saying before, is getting a little lost as well, maybe, right?
Yeah. Well, that all goes back to tracks. Are they tracks or are they stems?
Yeah. Good answer.
Right. Is it a song or is it a beat?
Yeah.
I made the beat. Well, then back in the day, that was called songwriting. I made the song. Instrumental. So I mean, nothing wrong with the lexicon changing, but as long as we all know what we're talking about.
Exactly. We actually have a question from the audience. Scott Harrison. Hey, Scotty. What are your thoughts on triggers for recording?
Oh, I've actually never really done triggers in a live recording where the other guys were hearing triggers, but nowadays with the low latency recording, with the low latency interfaces, I don't see why that wouldn't be fine.
Yeah.
Are you typically subsidizing samples on top to enhance,
like a mix, like mix in, like
mix in.
Bring it up on another fader in the DAW and put the trigger on there, and then you can blend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or and that's another good point too that you bring up about while recording, because what people want to hear when they record is different from person to person. Not even guys that play the same instrument will want to hear different kinds of things.
Yeah.
So you can't put all the horn players on the same mix. Right. Sometimes you have to if you're limited with your options, but I always try to give guys their own mix controls, but before they get there, I play something back that's kind of similar to what we're going to be doing, because we have Pro Tools now. You just bring your disc. You must have done a quintet record at some point, right?
Yeah,
of course.
Put the quintet on. Okay, here's the drums. Dial them up, and kind of make everybody's mix so that when they get there, because the first thing they're going to do is they're going to turn up themselves.
Yeah.
Then they're going to turn up the drums, and then they're going to turn up the bass. Yeah. And probably turn down the singer.
Every time.
So, but one of the things for an engineer is like the tenor player goes, oh man, I can't hear myself. And you go out there, look at the mix box, the headphone mix, and everything's on 100.
Cranked.
And you put it on, and it's the most god awful sound you've ever heard in your life.
Take her back to 1, boys.
Let's roll, push play.
That's funny.
Okay, here, try this.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh my God, what did you
Yeah.
do? Oh, it's
Yeah.
great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just to hearken to what Scott was saying there regards to triggers, I know a lot of metal drummers in particular it's because you're dealing with 2 bass drums. A lot of the time, the tunings of those 2 bass drums or the feels of both those bass drums are very different. So triggers become, I'm not going to use the word crutch, but it becomes an enhancer in that case. You get consistent sounds out of both those bass drums.
Yeah.
So I guess, Scott, I could imagine that when you're recording in the studio, you'd have to spend a lot of time getting both those bass drums sounding super exactly the same pitch and the same character.
Yeah.
Or you're using triggers. Have you ever dealt with that, Dave? Like 2 bass drums ever?
I've done some 2 bass drum records. I don't remember if I triggered them at that point because the person had like a wood beater, and it was a kind of a tight dead sound. So you were just getting these 16th note pulses from them. But I do trigger kicks and snares. I like the Clear Mountain sounds, Bob. If you know the engineer, Clear Mountain.
Yep.
He has a collection of sounds. I think came out years ago, and they're just great. They're at a power station. They were made at Power Station, New York, which is a big wood room, with one of those kind of cathedral ceilings, and he takes each snare drum and he has super dry, a medium decay room, and a long, so from mics like way up in the ceiling. So depending on what you want, you can slide that in. So I like those a lot. In fact, with Kenny Aronoff stuff, I think at one song I did use a snare trigger just because it sounded better in the tune, but mixed in with his snare.
Yes.
He's hitting it perfectly, and maybe I just adjusted the tone color. The trigger. But on the Nirvana Nevermind, now this is a story that everybody tells. I wasn't there, but they said they were triggering gunshots on the snare.
Whoa.
Pretty radical, huh?
Everybody listen.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of that. I've heard lots of stories around Bob Rock in the studio with Metallica, they were using metal and like James Hetfield at the time was a bigger gun nut, but cocking the guns and all these where they substituted over how did you get that sound, blah, blah. Basically sound design. More than
I was about to say, spoilers, you're engineering sound.
Totally.
So there's a pride, I guess, Dave, you could probably answer, speak on behalf of this, but there's a pride in creating something really beautiful out of audio.
So my calling card of that is the Oz show. So they
yes.
The reason I got that gig was they wanted somebody that wasn't in the film and TV world yet, and who we need a street guy. This is a show about jail and it's rude, and we need a street guy. Okay, well, I was doing the Diggable Planets record at the time, so they were Brooklyn hip hop, jazzy hip hop guys.
Nice. Yeah.
So I met with the producing team, and they said, we want the theme song to sound like a prison riot. In this cafeteria when one guy starts banging his plate, but then the other guy starts banging his cup, but they're not together.
Right. It's flaming.
Yeah. So that's what if you listen to the Oz theme, it's a Latin-y kind of congas and metal thing, and it just builds up on those rhythms, polyrhythmic thing, right?
Great design.
Right.
And so they said, great, we like it, and that's going to be the sound of the show. I'm like, great, it's all percussion, No, I wasn't allowed to use any synthesizers. Anytime I said let's have a moody pad because there's they're like, no spaceships.
There we go. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, back to the anvils.
That's sound design right there.
Take your anvil and spread it across the keyboard and play it down here at C-1.
Right.
That sounds like a murder's about to happen.
Right. Totally.
Exactly. I grew up in a family of engineers, structural engineers, computer engineers.
Yeah.
And I just remember being around Thanksgiving dinner back in the mid-90s. And one of my cousins said, sound engineer really isn't an engineer. You don't get a gold ring like you would, a civil engineer or anything like that.
Right, yeah.
And I just remember saying, well, I'm engineering. I can turn a fart into a violin sound with the right gear. I can make that happen.
And ultimately that's what making records is. I'm not an engineer because I like to twiddle knobs.
Totally, right?
I'm an engineer because I like making records.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
when I was a kid, the first thing that you could do of that nature was like Sony had a reel-to-reel that had a switch on it called sound on sound.
Mm-hmm.
So you could record on one channel, and then you could put it on sound, and the microphone and the tape would go to the second channel together.
Oh, brilliant.
And then switch it back the other way, and those two things would go to your third thing. So my little band in 8th grade,
early bouncing.
the drummer had to play the song perfectly all the way down.
Yikes.
Then I had to play it perfectly all the way down. And then the guitar player had to play it perfectly. And then we would try to sing on top of it. We were, babes in the woods, but it was, I was hooked, man. That was like, wow, this is better than skateboard.
But that's well, don't go too far. Skateboarding is kind of fun too. But that's the production. That's absolutely. How are we laying it down? How are we going to layer things? All
those elements, the sound design, the diva whispering, the song, helping the guy write the song, even if you're not getting a songwriting credit, but you can say, what if you switched up the tempo in the bridge? Oh, great. You're not going to get an ASCAP credit for that, but you facilitated.
Yeah.
So when you come home and you go to sleep at night, you go, I did something today that didn't exist before today.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when I go home, there's something new that didn't exist before I got up.
Which is pretty damn cool.
Pretty cool.
That resonates hard.
Yeah.
Which I don't think people slow down to think about.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, not every day is a genius award. Not every day is great.
Right.
But you're being, you have to decide in life what's valuable to you.
Yeah.
One of the themes that Sean and I love touching base on, and I kind of mentioned it pre-stream here, is failure. And I'll ask the question that I typically ask at the end. But it's easy to put our heroes on a pedestal, but they seem more human when we see them fail, right?
Yeah.
And we're big proponents of learning from failure. Is there any failure moment throughout your career that was just a punch to the gut that was
man,
oh my God, what do I do?
Too numerous to mention.
How do you pull it out, right?
In the very early days, I erased a bridge part of a song of a vocalist that had flown in from Chicago and was already flying on his way back, and I accidentally, not all of it, but and the producer was, okay, what we'll do is we'll shorten the bridge by 4 bars, and we'll have it. He figured out how to save it, but it was it was horrifying.
That'd be hard.
I'm trying to think what else.
Yeah.
Luther Vandross used to want to punch in like syllables at a time, like just get the B, but keep the cause, because I like the way I said
yeah.
And then
Charlie Puth does that too.
Yeah, so on an analog tape recorder, you have to know the ballistics. It's called ballistics.
Yeah.
By the time you hit that record, it takes a split second to go in, and you have to get out a little early because it takes a split second to come. So I erased a breath once of Luther. I came in too early. I got the B, but I erased the breath before the B that he wanted to keep, and we kept the cause. So I was pretty good.
Yeah.
Did you lose my breath? Oh yeah, I guess I did. He goes, that was the acid you took in college. Let's do it again.
I'm really appreciating a lot of the time people have bigger, like these monumental failures. These little micro moments are coming out that kind of resonated with you your entire career.
I just got an email from a guy today. He asked me if I would engineer a big band record maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah. And I screwed up my schedule. And so by the time he got back around to me and said, yeah, it's on for, December 8th or whatever. I said, oh man, I took something else. I didn't hear from you. So he goes, but I thought we were just waiting to confirm. So, so for 3 months, at my age and my stage in my career, I'm feeling like, man, I really screwed up, and I lost somebody good that could maybe help me do something along the way. So today he got an email. I got an email from him. He didn't even mention it. Yeah. He goes, I'm teaching a course at NYU, and I want to tell the kids about good studios. Is it okay if I use your studio?
Cool.
Which was like,
not
only are you a great guy, you're like the coolest guy I know.
Totally.
So I'm gonna answer that email tomorrow morning after coffee, going, dude, I'm still sorry I screwed you up, but thanks a million.
Totally, right?
And other than like auditions where you really only have one shot, I've never had a thing where I got canned. Because of doing something. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen assistant engineers get canned, and one guy erased a master tape once by accident.
Ooh.
You used to have to set the big 24 tracks. They have 24 amplifiers, right? Recording amps.
Yes.
And you used to have to set them so that if the tape came from somewhere else, it had to play back the same way when there were volumes for highs, mids, and lows. And then there was a record volume and an erase setting called bias. So you had to set those on all 24 tracks every time you changed tapes.
Right.
That's called aligning the tape machine. We don't have to do that anymore. So this poor guy, and then you had to record new tones so that you could see that you were recording zeros and not, -3 or +3 or whatever. So there was a thing called a pad where you put the oscillator on and now you're recording and you're adjusting the record amps. Yeah. And after the pad is a little leader tape. This is the white tape. And then after that was the song.
Yep.
So he's down at the bottom of the tape machine doing the record amps and 27, 19, 20, 21, 22, stop. And he looks and the white tape is over here on the take-up reel. He was 45 seconds into the master of the song.
Oh boy. Oh no. Oh no.
So he didn't even wait around. He just left.
He just got in his car. I'm out of here, by the way, if you're wondering. Yeah.
I think I'm going to be a rapper.
Yeah. Exactly. He's got life stories
and he
to
actually
tell.
was a very successful rapper, but we always talk about that story and laugh. It's well known around town.
That resonates with him till the end of time, for sure. And with every failure becomes multiple successes, I guess, at that point.
Yeah.
But I guess you've never been reprimanded in your life. Oh, my goodness. You had it good.
No, I don't think I can't think of anybody like yelling at me or anything like that. I mean, you've had gigs where they didn't call you the second time they went elsewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think anybody who runs any kind of small business has not experienced that. I mean, even in fact, I just did a record with Ricky Lee Jones, a pretty famous singer, and I suggested a certain mastering engineer who I love. And they didn't like it when it came back, and it was great. It was great, I thought, and he didn't do anything radical or anything. But they went elsewhere, and I felt bad for my friend, but he didn't feel that bad. He goes, "Well, I'm not gonna chase him. I know what I'm capable of."
Not everyone's cup of tea, and not everyone.
Totally.
Even tea isn't your cup of tea.
Looking for a certain thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. But it went to another very famous New York guy who did a great job, and it was also my friend, and everybody's happy. That's the bottom line.
One of the things again, I'm going to divert a little bit. One of the things you touched on in your course, Dave, and this does definitely mistakes, but like necessarily just being present and being sort of there, listening to you. One of the things that I took away when, especially drummers who say do their own recordings or record acoustic drums at home, and I never realized this, and I've listened now to some old stuff, is that we're very unaware of how susceptible we are to stuff being out of phase, especially like snares and cymbals. And now I'm listening to some demos and I'm like, shit, that's why that sounded like fucking garbage.
Yeah. People, it's hard to recognize out of phaseness when you don't know what to listen for.
Right.
Like even if a stereo image is out of phase, one side forward and one side backward.
Yeah.
I find it makes my head tilt a little bit. Like I feel like it's hitting this ear.
Yeah.
And I can recognize it right away. And then when I show people what it is, like some people have their studio monitors wired out of phase.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? I've walked into people's bedroom studios and they go, it just doesn't sound good. And I go, can't you hear that that's out of phase? They go, what do you mean? And because they had, banana plugs on the back and the red and black was backwards or whatever it was, That's less likely to happen now with our interfaces with 1/4 inch or XLRs going right into an XLR. That's already set.
Yeah.
There's certainly people still with some NS10s that are plugging stuff in though, but
plugging in backwards. But especially with drum mics, I've helped a couple of drummers remotely set up their home studios. And what I do is we talk it over kind of on a Zoom vibe like this. And then, so record 2 minutes and send it to me, and let me just look at it.
Right.
Okay, so did you notice that your right overhead is way louder than your left overhead? So the picture of the drums.
Yep.
Right.
If I put them up even, like you would normally put two overheads, which is a stereo picture looking down at the drum kit.
Yes.
So, okay, so you have to adjust. Yeah, but that's my ride and that's my crash. It doesn't matter. The snares on those guys too. And the kick, right?
Yep.
You know the rule of thumb about the line between the kick and snare. Do you know that? So the snare is offset from the kick, right? If you're sitting at the kick, the snare is slightly left and the kick is slightly right.
Yep.
So the center of the drum kit is not a straight line out from the throne.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The center of the drum kit angles northeast from you a little bit, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So now,
Sorry, that's resonating with me. That's good.
Right. So your overheads should be equidistant from that center line, and equidistant from that little place in between the kick and the snare where people put the mic they call the worst. You know about the worst mic?
Yeah.
So the worst, that's kind of the center of the sound, which is actually in front of you like this, and what you're used to hearing, because you kind of look this way a little bit when you play, right?
Right.
So that center line, and then these guys should be equidistant. Sometimes people put them concentric, here.
Yes.
Or if they're going to be spaced, pointing down the same way, or even pointing straight down. But the point is, you want that snare drum to hit them both at the same time.
Yeah.
The main components of the beat, the kick and the snare, should both hit those overheads at the same time. Then the cymbals are gravy after that.
Right.
We got it. At that point, we've got it. With a snare mic and a kick mic and two overheads, you're probably okay.
It's interesting to even talk about it, because as you're mentioning it, I'm like, that all makes sense, because we've been doing it for so long, but now I'm like, I've got vocabulary for it now. I get it. Yeah.
They're plugging in everything at home. They don't really go to the store and buy 12 XLR cables.
True.
Mm-hmm. They've got some from their, some of the bass player left over at their house. Yeah. And maybe it's miswired or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, your overheads are out of phase. One's going up and one's going. What do you mean? And then we go on Zoom, and I zoom in and show them that, okay, look at this left overhead. This wave is going up when you hit the snare drum. This wave is going down when you hit the drum. So your overheads are working against each other.
Yeah. But Dave, it doesn't matter. It sounds cool. It's rock and roll. Don't tell me what to do, right?
It's certainly wide, because it's in the middle.
That's right.
Yes. And it's funny. It was shortly after your course that I even was cognitive of EQing side or mid
mid-side. I mean, that used to be solely the purview of mastering engineers, because those circuits that could do that were very, very expensive and hard. So
and that has opened my eyes, especially to capturing sound. There's like even a couple mixes I've done, and I've done that in Reaper. There's a specific way you can do it, and now having done that, I'm like, oh my God, like all of my effects.
You can even take it a step further with not only EQing, but also the dynamic EQ or multi-band compression. And let's say your cymbals are harsh around 4K or 5K. What about a dynamic EQ that only when you bash it subdues them a little? But if you just kind of like ride cymbaling and it's not really too aggressive, then it's not hurting that one. Instead of scooping it out all the time, you're only scooping it out when it's aggressive. Yeah. And then your snare really still sounds good.
Yeah.
And you can do that only on the sides if you want to.
Yep.
Totally. There's a term I use called Q fishing, and I'm sure maybe you could talk a bit about it. Like we're talking, maybe it's around 5K, maybe it's 6K. How do we find those?
Okay, so it's much easier than you think. So you pick a band of EQ, and most digital EQs can sweep the whole way, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You make it. You turn what's called the Q. The Q is the width of the bell, the breadth of the bell. You make the bell as skinny as you can.
Like a notch.
So even though on your Reaper or whatever, it still looks like this. It's really like this. It's
gotcha
in digital language, right? And in the size of an octave, it's really tiny.
Okay.
Then you crank it all the way up, which in most cases is 18 dB. Some EQs have 24 and even 30.
Yep.
Crank it all the way up. Now it's going to whistle just because it's boosting it like a filter sweep. Yep. But at some point, there's going to be something that's so ugly that you almost can't stand it. You have to turn your speakers down. This is especially true in vocals and horns and cymbals.
Yeah.
And sometimes electric guitar. Like anything that has a tendency to be brittle or harsh, And then you just find that when it really starts to wail like a feedback, that's the ugly. So the mantra is take out the ugly and leave what's pretty.
I think this art is so, like, when I learned this when I was a kiddo, learning this exactly what you're talking about. And when you put it into practice, it became so valuable. But I think that it's such a overlooked thing to do,
and
but such an art, right?
I used to look at these engineers and they go, oh, that's like probably 250, 270. I'm like, how do you even know that? Well, what the hell?
Right.
I don't even know what note it is on the piano, let alone the number that corresponds. But if you've done that enough, you start to recognize, like, the sound of a roomy thing is a 400, 500 world. The sound of a is the 270, 300, and is 2,500. Right? Like the shriek of that shriek of that vocalist that you can't stand.
Yeah, nice, exactly.
And then you find them and you go, well, that's probably 2,500. Well, how do you know that? Because I've done it 3,000 times.
Totally.
This week.
That's right.
Well, I think just to go down the cue road is that not a lot of people understand that as you open that cue, you're sympathetically affecting many other frequencies outside of that, right?
You got to be careful.
So the cue becomes like your most valuable tool when it comes to EQing. And I think people are just like, wink, wink, oh, I'll just do this, or I'll make it a happy face, or I'll do whatever. But EQing, we talked about minimalistic stuff or negative space. Using it precisely is really an art form.
And the old saw is subtractive EQ is better than additive EQ, but sometimes you need to shine things up a little bit, or sometimes you need to warm things up a little bit. There's a number of ways you can do it not EQ, right? You can saturate or whatever, but EQ is a tool. There's a good video of Chris Lord-Alge recording drums somewhere, and he goes, you know how he is, these are EQs. They're there to use them. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put bullseye on the cymbals, and this is what we do. It's like, okay, Chris, you're not wrong. If they don't sound right, you fix it first and then record it, right?
Well, just like you were saying, there's secrets that people have used, especially with EQing. I remember being younger and an engineer friend said, 20 at 20 on your snare. Just do that, and your snare will sound amazing. And I was like, 20 dB at 20K? Okay, well, let's see what happens here.
It's almost inaudible, but it's a transient, right?
100%, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so as I did that, I was like, what? 100%, that did something very interesting. And 20 at 20 suddenly became a thing over my career of just like, let me try this, and if it works, and if it not, then
so here's another good thing you can do with EQs in your DAW, like Reaper or Ableton or whatever. So find an EQ that gives you the RTA, the readout of your stuff. Put a fader with pink noise, right? Most DAWs have a noise generator, right? White noise or sine wave. Put pink noise and then put the EQ and look at that pink noise, and it's doing this, right? This I don't know how this is translating to your viewers, but this would be the
low frequency.
And this is the treble, because treble frequencies have more energy. So white noise is flat. Pink noise is skewed to even out the energy of all the frequencies. So it's the most honest.
Right.
So that's your mix, right? You're making a generator put out pink noise. That's your mix. Open up a new fader like you're going to record a vocal or something. Put the EQ on it, and put a very good microphone, a flat microphone, like if you have an Earthworks or a B&K or something that's really flat. Put that where you listen, like in my case it would be here. Now look at those two curves. Here's your mix, and here's what you're hearing on that microphone.
Whoa, yeah.
Right? You have a visual graph paper of what your room is not telling you about the record that you're going to send out to the world.
What a great tip.
Right? This is the record, because that's what it is. When you send that off to Spotify,
honest. It's honest.
But here's my room. It's like, so get a subwoofer. Boom. Okay, now the bass is actually okay, but I got a lump here. Okay, let's pull the speakers out from the wall a little bit. Some speakers have controls in the back. A lot of the active, not so expensive active monitors have treble and bass controls. Maybe we need to hang another blanket on the corner over here, whatever it is. So and it doesn't you don't have to be doing that loud. You have to be doing it loud enough that your speakers are reacting.
Yes.
And in the room, I kind of put headphones on when I do it, because it's. But you adjust the sub, get it as good as you can, and then you adjust the volume of your mains. And then if it's still not too flat, you've got some bumps, you know, you just try to figure out how to get them out so that what you're hearing is what you're sending.
It's accurate.
Yeah.
So when guys go out, you know, you do a mix and guys go out, let's go play it in the car. It's not.
Totally.
Why?
Right.
Because you were hearing it now in your room, and before you bought that subwoofer, you weren't hearing any of that stuff. So you're putting it in
Yes.
so you could feel good in the room with your guys.
Or you're
Right.
compensating and just going, oh, I know that these speakers are, you know, minus 10
That's
dB.
even more dangerous. You know?
So this sounds like crap here, but trust me, guys. Trust
Yeah.
me, client.
Right.
Client,
Yeah.
it's going to sound great in your car. It sounds like garbage here, but it's going to sound
You know,
great.
I show this to musicians all the time, and I have an Earthworks mic that I freely loan out to all my guys. You know, my friend, the bass player who just made his record, I'm like, well, my room, how do you do? I show him that trick, and I go, you can borrow this, but I'm going to write it down because I'll forget that I gave
Totally.
it. Keep it for a month. You know, get some monitors from Sam Ash, and if you don't like them, take them back and get some other ones.
I think you hit it on the head. Getting an RTA mic is actually, wow, I've totally forgotten a lot
Right,
about
because
RTA
you know those
mics,
kind of
right?
Earthworks mics. If you take the screen off them,
Yeah.
they're meant to be flat 20-20.
I think Soundcraft made one. Maybe Behringer made one as well, which wasn't bad,
It
if
used
I
to-
remember
if you
correctly.
bought- if you ever bought
an
an
actual
RTA,
RTA, yeah.
If you ever bought an RTA, it came with a mic. I used to set my PA up when I had a band.
Yeah.
We would go into the venue at 3 PM and blow all the guys off the bar with pink noise. But man, my PA sound good,
Rad.
right? Whatever we were singing was coming through the PA in a nice way because we got all the
Translate.
Every
Yeah.
room has its own problems, right?
Yeah.
So you know, I would use a graphic EQ. That's a last resort.
That's
Right.
resonating with me big time. Anything I'm really taking back is RTA, reminding me of a RTA application. This is good. Oh,
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah.
Mainly, you know, what's coming out is what you hearing and assessing. That's the
Yes. Yeah.
You know, well, I got, you know, do you like KRKs or do you like Neumann, Lesis, whatever? Like, I like them all if the room is tuned. It doesn't really matter the brand. The brand is not,
Right.
you know, if it's honest, it's honest, right?
Yep.
But if the room is fooling you, that's no good.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And maybe that's a good illustrator. Does more expensive mean better?
Yes and no. You know, you have to have a few. If you really want to get paid to mix records.
Yeah.
So I don't know, can this be seen here?
Bring
So
her around.
there's my typical studio stuff, right? Yamaha NS10s, those need an
Those
amp.
are NS10s. That's funny.
Yeah. So you have to have a little power amp, which is over here in my rack.
Mm-hmm.
But not a big one, but it's got to run comfortably. You can't have a Cadillac and put a Volkswagen engine. It's not going to.
True. No, very well said. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then, if you can see this is like a beach radio from the 90s. Like the guys on the women on the next blanket at the beach are playing their shit too loud.
Yep.
on this.
Frisbees, my friend.
But
Yeah.
guess what? That's how your record sounds at Jones Beach.
Yep.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then nowadays we have Alexa.
Yeah.
Right? So play my new artist. Boom. Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Super boomy.
Yeah.
You know, they make a big spike at like, you know, 195 something.
Yep.
So you can't have that in your record, or else Alexa's going to sound awful. They build hype into all the Alexas.
You're answering it, but I was going to allude to the question of when you're mixing, and are you thinking about where it's going to be played at all times, or are you almost pushing a little bit of 60% in your brain, going, this is where you're going to hear it through these speakers here?
So the next thing we have 2 studio monitors, we have 2 radios.
Yeah, totally.
7506s. They're not kind. but they're honest. And
I broke mine years ago, and I haven't replaced them. And you're the second person to tell me to get them
boomy in
again.
here, it's boomy, and if it's shrill and hurts in here, it hurts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now there's a software called Audio Movers. Are you familiar with Audio Movers? So it's a subscription, like $10 a month.
Yeah.
You put it on your master bus at the end of everything, and it broadcasts it out to the world. You can have as many as 10 people listening on the browser.
Yeah. Right.
The same way we're doing this on a browser. So Audio Movers. I just mixed with a guy in Europe today, and you know, he's listening about a second after me.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about, okay, that pad is a little too loud, and can we have a little more hi-hat? Sure. And we're finessing his mix in real time 4,000 miles apart.
Art.
And we got through the whole album in a day. Too.
The resolution, you don't lose any resolution through
No,
the
you can
at all?
have 32-bit wave. Wow. There's levels depending on your internet connection, but I just start with the 32-bit wave, and it's great.
Yep.
So you can then you can broadcast it to your own phone right in the room and turn off your speakers and go, want to hear my new song?
Brilliant. You can reference it absolutely anywhere real time.
So two studio monitors that sound great with a sub, so it sounds full.
Yeah.
Two radios, an old one and a new one. Good headphones, and broadcast to your phone and check it out. If you get it sounding pretty okay on those 6 things, you kind of got it.
That's 99% of where the world's listening, right?
The last 10% is like in the production. Is there anything as we go along? My thing is, can I push play at the beginning and get all the way to the end without going, ooh?
Yeah.
If I'm just going,
yeah,
and I get to the end and the fade out,
yeah.
But if I go, ooh, okay, we got to fix that.
Yeah.
Totally.
And sometimes that's hard because you've been doing it all day and you're tired, but if there's anything that takes you off your groove in the mix, then you haven't finished your job. People ask me, like, when are you done? When I'm done is when I can listen from front to back and not be distracted by something that bugs me.
Pulled you out of the song.
Very simple.
Well
really.
said. There's a lot of science behind it. I always think about pilots that they do need to look out the windows and look at the clouds, but they're looking at the dials in front of them, and it's facts, right?
They're looking at the gauges. Absolutely.
That's right. So there is a certain sense of science behind what you're doing that just makes sense. That even before you bring the faders up, or maybe if you did a rough listen to it, you can just, like a good chef, you can kind of say, "Oh, this needs this type of ingredients," and go. Right?
That's a really good point you bring up. Is like, don't do stuff before you listen to it.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Like, don't run your vocals through CLA vocal thing because it sounds good most of the time if you haven't even listened to what's going on.
That's good.
Right? Maybe it's a different kind of a song that doesn't need all that hype. That's a pop kind of a thing usually.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a smoky ballad that would just, all it needs is a little plate reverb and it's going to be great. At least listen and use your creativity. I don't mix by template. I store my template.
Yes.
But I don't just put everything through the same way all the time. I think that would be really counterproductive.
Yeah.
Well said.
People used to save my presets when I would go to their house. I'd help them mix, and I'd see them saving, Dave vocals, Dave kick.
Yeah.
Are you going to use the same kick drum on every record you ever make from now on?
Yeah.
Based on me.
That's 100% what it is.
That plug-in is working on that kick drum. It's not going to be the same every time.
But you may also get mom goggles, and just when you hear something for the first time, everything is compared to that first time. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So how do you unwind that the first time you heard it may not have been the best way, but now we're always just like, wow, it didn't sound good.
Part of longevity and experience is, it's like, like we were saying earlier, I wouldn't want to hear my mixes from the late 80s. They're just probably like really not good.
Perfect. That's good news, by the way. It means you got good.
I want to get better tomorrow than I am today.
That's correct. I hope you should not like your mix from last week, and you're better this week, right?
And you know what? There's something new to study and assess if it's happening good or not good. Yeah. Or if I need to incorporate this or not incorporate that.
Yeah. But that was one of the things you said a lot in your course, Dave, was that, and you always sort of prefaced a lot of things, was you came back to the fact that, before I did any of this, I sat and I just started listening to the mix and trying to move things around to see where they all fit in the mix before you did anything, before you did any sort of sound manipulation, it was like, where is everything supposed to sit?
The thing about that course was all those songs were given to me by the producers who said, we're finished making the song. Sometimes when you're mixing, they're not done.
Right.
Yes.
They want to hear it hyped up, and they go, you know what? We need a bagpipe solo. Call the guy.
Yeah.
And you go like, I've got plugins on every. You have to take this shit off.
Here we go. It's coming out. Yep.
But in those cases, we structured the thing to have like a hip hop song, a singer songwriter, and they said this is the record that we love, and they had their own rough mixes too, which were very very good, most of them.
Yeah.
And so you know at that point that we need to use all this stuff and we can't leave anything out, but we're not going to be adding anything else either.
Right.
So it's a finite. It's chef's battle. This is the ingredients we got for tonight's dinner, and we can't leave anything out.
Yes.
So right, and then as you saw in the course, the first thing I like to do is like organize my index cards. These are drums.
Yeah.
Color coded. All that shit
man.
that's blue, that's the drum.
Totally.
All that shit that's purple, that's the bass.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody asks me, why do you use those colors? Well, Sharpies, right? The pens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back in the day, you put a big piece of tape on your giant 72 input board, and you told your assistant 23 and 17 and 8, those are all drums, they go over here. And then you wrote it down. So you used the blue Sharpie for the drums.
Yeah.
And you used the purple Sharpie for the bass and the orange Sharpie for the background. So, everybody has their own way.
Time code was in black. Yep.
All the guys that I grew up with in New York, we all kind of have the same color scheme because there were only 6 Sharpies.
Right.
Wow.
I would say
Dave, I never connected that. That's really funny.
That was also another big takeaway for me. By the time I finished that, I don't even think I got through the first 20 minutes of it. And I literally, you can ask my wife, I probably spent 4 days redoing my entire template for my tracks.
Yeah.
The routing and the accents. And I was just like, oh my God, I have totally not fucking even understood.
The organizational thing, you used to have to patch things in. Now we just drag them up and down on the timeline. The other thing we used to have to do, we always would put, most of those big giant boards would be like a 24 track on one side and then the center section and then a 24 track on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
48 or even more, 64.
More, yeah.
So we always put the vocal, whatever track it was recorded on the tape, we would always patch it to 24. And I remember going, why are you putting the vocal on 24? Because I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
When I'm touching the vocal fader, I have this giant scape.
Yeah.
Yep.
Physical hardware escape here, but really the record is here.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't and then that's the other thing with the colors and the visuals and the plugins and all that. You can't let that distract you from. What were you gonna say? Heuristics.
Heuristics.
Yeah, that's right. That's
don't let the colorful faders distract you. What are you doing? Are you painting or are you?
I can tell you the value that as an editor, when I got sessions that were well coded and when they were color coded, like things were. Or any of the notes or anything were well organized. It just made my job so much easier. So much
easier.
Yeah.
And that's a mark of a professional guy on that side.
Yeah.
When you if I'm recording something and I'm going to send it somewhere, I make sure everything is neat as a pin, and I'm not going to send them stuff that they're not going to use. I take it out of the audio folder.
I can't tell you how many sessions.
Save a copy with only the good stuff. Save them. Like, what the heck is this?
Totally.
And name everything properly.
Words out of my mouth. I was going to say, I can't tell you how many sessions I got with audio 1, audio 2, audio 3.
Thanks. Now I just, that's a day I'll never get back.
That's exactly. Oh, God. What is this spacebar? What is the mute solo? Okay, but this is obscure horn shot at minute 5:30.
My friend that we were working with today, some of them were like Moog pad and stuff, but then others were like Hornet's Nest. I'm like, is that a pad or a bag of nails falling down the stairs, or what is it?
Yeah,
the real Hornet's Nest, maybe.
Yeah. I do remember when Pro Tools did add the notes section to each track, and I was like, oh, good. Please utilize that. Tell me which patch on the synth you were using in that, or just absolutely everything. Utilize it with as much notes as possible. Right?
Mic choices.
Totally, right? Yeah, it became valuable, but a lot of people just didn't know that. They were just engineering and sending it off to whoever.
Well, and it simplifies the workflow. Like you said, Dave, the simplest path to a good album is a straight line. So if you're not having to dick with all of the stuff that oh my God, I'm so disorganized, you're adding minutes to your day.
We're kind of skating around heuristics, right? Things that keep you from making good decisions. So I'll pull up a reverb and somebody will be looking over my shoulder. Is that good?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you have to define good.
Right.
Second of all, you have to define subjectively what's good for you. And third of all, we have to decide if it's subjectively good for this application. What do you mean, is it good? I'm going to be a photographer. Should I get a Canon or a Nikon? That's the last thing you need to worry
Yep.
about. What
Yeah.
should I
Yep.
get?
Yep.
Is that good? Should I get that compressor? Do you like the old LA2As or the new LA2As? You know, what's the vintage ones different? It's like so irrelevant.
My friend
Right.
told me that I should get ...
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Game changer, you know.
totally. Well, I'm sure
Yeah.
you could. I'm sure you could resonate on this
You know,
with.
keep
yeah.
your eye on the prize. What are you doing? You're making a record, which is
Yep.
which is a sound sculpture of somebody's vision. Maybe not even your vision, but this,
Yeah.
Very true.
somebody, the producer or the artist or the band or whatever, has some idea.
Yep.
And they like it because they like these kinds of bands or these kinds of singers or these kinds of instruments or whatever it is that inform their choice. Your job is to make them so excited when it comes on. That's our job, right? It's like make them do that inhale thing of like, wow, I don't know what you did, man, but oof.
Yeah.
Okay. Question. What is your feeling on... Okay, I'm going to take it back a second piece. An engineer friend of mine 2 decades ago told me the key to a successful recording studio are these 3 things. Have a PlayStation or just something in the other room
Yeah.
with a TV.
Yeah.
Have good coffee
Yes.
and make sure the women's bathroom is clean and nice.
Very, very good advice.
Totally. He said none of that has to do with gear. It has to do with making the client comfortable and, more importantly, the client out of your face.
Yeah.
And doing their thing while you get to get some work done and you bring them in. Yeah. What's your experience with working with clients that are right over your shoulder trying to be a part of the process?
Well, you know, I sort of have a little comedic slant to my banter, you know, that like I'm a fairly patient guy, you know, I'm a Leo, so I can take a lot, but then Leos have a very sharp continental shelf.
Yeah, my son's
when you step into that deep water, you're in fucking trouble.
You're in shit. Yeah. Oh god. You're gonna wish you never did that.
What did you do to Dave? I've never seen him get so mad.
Never.
So you go along, and then they go, you know, is that pad too loud, or how's the hi-hat? You know, people get a little frustrated with having to make so many decisions and not being secure about the decisions, and I always go back to the same kind of mantras of like take a step back. You know, it's a trumpet is not a record, a kick drum is not a record. You know, we're making a painting here with lots of elements and a frame. Yeah. You know, and a subject matter and a positioning and everything. Let's look holistically. Let's listen holistically and listen globally, and viscerally, and see how it feels. And if we're missing some feeling or something, then we'll figure out what that is. But it's not necessarily how loud is the hi-hat. Right. So that can back them up too. And but you're really right about the cleanliness thing, and you know, they used to call it client services of like, you know, having some decent coffee, or at least an espresso machine.
Totally.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You know, so they can go in a place where they can go chill. Now, in my space where we did the other podcast, you probably could see it off to one side. The lounge is sort of on the way to the live room, but they both separate. Yeah. So the gang can sit in the lounge and talk about other stuff, and the singer and I can work, and the producer.
Yeah.
So but you know, everybody's working with less these days, and rightfully so, because the physical plant doesn't have to be so big. We don't have very seldom we have the big speakers in the roof anymore.
Yeah.
And we don't have 2 tape machines on one corner and a rack of stuff.
No. Yeah. I have to admit, some of the better sessions I've done has been in like, I don't know, a 12 by 12 room where everybody you shut off the mains and everybody goes on headphones and you track it. And I'm like, damn, that sounds good, you know?
Yeah. The room I'm in now is the 3rd room I built in my life, and you learn as you go along. The 2nd one was better than the first one, and the 3rd one was kind of by luck. It was built as the Oz writing room because I couldn't afford to write Oz on my big 72 input SSL, because I had to make a lot of money in that room to pay for the SSL.
Yeah. Right.
So I took where I am now as a writing space, and then Pro Tools came along. So an actual writing atelier became big enough to do records in.
Right.
Now when people come in my room, they go, oh, nice big studio. I'm like, wow, you should have seen me in the 80s.
Yeah, because I think that's kind of the deal. Growing up as a drummer, my dad always said, you should play a big drum kit. Audiences love like lots of toms and lots of everything. And I quote this all the time. I don't get paid more to bring more when I come to a gig.
No, right.
So I'm just bringing kick, hat, snare. If I can get away with that all night, I'm totally good with it. But I feel like it's kind of the same with recording studios. Clients do want to see flashy lights. They want to see Vegas mode on the Avid.
But you can also have flashy lights. You know, if you have the hi-hat, the airline hi-hats in the roof, you know, with some dimmers.
Yeah.
So in my control room, it's not so big. So we probably got, I don't know, 6 in this row and 4 in this row. Yeah. But when we get a mix going, I got my 2 dimmers by the door.
Yeah,
I can Studio 54 them all day long.
Yeah, baby.
Like, wow. Yeah. And there's little tricks, and they know that I'm tricking them and goofing on them, but they like it. You know,
it's a good experience,
Dave's
right?
into it, you know.
Yeah. It's all about the customer and client experience is very important, and especially
they have to have a good time, and you know you can't yawn and stuff and feel like, you know, like make them feel like you can't wait to be done, you know.
But when I think about major clients that you've worked with, the customer, the hospitality becomes even more important at that point. Absolutely. And when you're being paid big dollars to be accountable to time, I guess you got to be efficient as well. When does efficiency?
You know, some of those people have people to take care of everything for them, you know.
Yeah.
And they need an airline ticket, they just, you know, boom, boom, boom. So as the engineer, you know, you got to be ready, you know, ready to go, you know, listen to the music before they get there, if at all possible.
Yeah.
Check the mics, make sure the water is on the table, the box of Kleenex is on the table, a chair to sit in if they want to take a little break off their feet.
Yes.
And all that, the lights, the temperature of the room. I mean, talk about producers. One of the good lessons from one of those diva whisperers was like the temperature in the vocal room has got to be right. It can't be hot and sweaty, but it can't be freezing either, because it tightens up their vocal cords.
That's right. Yeah. It's all about experience and feel. Like I read Mick Fleetwood's book, probably one of the most eye-opening books I've ever read. And he's one of my favorite drummers. I wouldn't consider him one of the best drummers in the world, but
nobody plays the right stuff for those.
He plays exactly the right parts, and that he said earlier on in their career, for them it was about. He compared it to, and then shortly after this I read his biography, was Picasso. He said Picasso created in a studio, in a place, an environment that made him feel inspired. He said
well into his 90s.
And well into it, and he said, so we've never really, with the exception of a few albums, we've always tried to find places that made us feel creative, that made us feel less crazy, because our lives were so crazy. And like renting out houses or villas, and it was like
setting up in the living room and getting a board over there.
Totally.
Right? Like it's all about, to me, it's an immersive experience. It's much more than just, like you said, Dave, it's not about that hi-hat part, or it's not about how loud that fucking kick is. It's about the whole painting. Right. And what does it look like on the wall? Does it look good now?
Well, and also the secret, you know, as an engineer, you have to make them feel like you're in it too. Like you're not in the band. You know, you don't get to make the decision about where lunch is going to come from.
Right.
But you are there for that record. You are an integral part of the band, and you have to be just as excited about it as they are.
You're a translator.
Because if you're not, then you're just like a janitor, you know, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you become, and you'd be surprised at how those high-end guys relax when they see you. I can take care of my room is going to be neat as a pin, because I'll take care of that. And is there anything else you need, sir?
Right.
And then they're like, Dave, we love Dave. Oh yeah, we had a great, you know what I mean?
Oh, Dave's on the session? Oh, no problem. We're good.
It doesn't take long. You know, the first half a day might be like, who's the new guy, you know? But as soon as they see that you're covering your bait, you know, you're playing shortstop the way you're supposed to play shortstop, and they're playing the outfield, and they're hitting home runs the way they're supposed to hit home runs, and you're going to win together. And they feel that. They feel that from you.
I just had this discussion.
I hope he likes me, or, you know, I hope he thinks the sound is okay. No, I know. You're
hitting the nail on the head, because I just talked to somebody yesterday about the fact that they were really being prideful about a sound guy that they work with in the city all the time. and it makes them smile when they walk in. They're like, "Oh, he's doing sound today. We got no worries.
Right.
Everything's gonna be amazing."
It's
right?
true. They got, you know, the live guys, man. God bless them, because that's a hard. That's a
hard gig.
Totally. That moment passes and you get it or
Yeah.
you don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there is a factor that bands that get it, where the sound guy or your engineer is a member of the band.
Yeah.
That they need to translate what you're trying to do. And the reality is, if you're not clear, or more importantly, you're a jerk to them, they can sabotage you to a certain extent.
Well,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I know they wouldn't, and I know you wouldn't, but to that, you're not in the game if you're not connecting with the people.
Right.
Right?
Right. It's a service industry, and you know, when you go set up a mic in front of a horn player, you know, it's like, is this okay for you? You know, is this how have people done it in the past? Like, you know, can you see your music okay and everything? And they go, oh, well, this guy actually gives a shit about what I think.
Yeah.
Right. So you're already on the same field together, you know.
Yeah.
And then if they come back in the control room for a playback and it sounds somewhat, they're used to coming into the control room and not liking it.
True.
Right.
More than not, right?
Yeah.
The times when they come in and it's great are less than the times when they come in and
It was awesome.
Well,
we got to do that
I
again.
think musicians are sometimes challenged with the fact that when they come in to listen, they're just hearing it super dry, super rough.
Yeah.
And there's no fourth dimensional thinking that, you know, oh, my snare is a little, we know, we're going to mix it in the end. It's totally good. Don't worry about it. Oh, but this guitar is a little loud. It's totally good. We got
right. And that's not even the right conversation to be having right there.
Totally. That's exactly what it is.
That's the wrong thing to be doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got to slow down that conversation. But if you trust a guy that's behind the desk, you just walk in and you go, I imagine that would sound great when we're done. Cool.
Yeah.
And you know, you just be ready when they get there and everything, and you know, help them schlep stuff occasionally if there's more stuff than they can carry.
Totally.
This opens the door, Dave, to my favorite story of yours, which was when you first met Sting, and it ended up him buying you a beer, but it was the shortest ride you'd ever had.
Don't bury the lead.
Well, no. It's the shortest ride he's ever had.
And
I'll let Dave explain.
Sting he has a place in New York and a place in Westchester County. So he has a driver, and the driver would deliver him to the studio. We started at 11 every day, and it was a Cadillac Escalade, and the driver would sit in front of the studio in a parking zone and just read the paper or watch videos or whatever, in case Sting wanted to go somewhere. So. One day he goes, I feel like a beer. We need to all take a break and have a beer. Me, the assistant, and him. So where can we go? Well, there's a bar right across the street. Okay, great, let's go. And he calls this guy we all piled into the Escalade and literally drove out of the parking space and across the avenue and
U-turn.
Not a U-turn, just like one parking space north on 10th Avenue.
Yeah.
And we all piled out into this Irish bar.
Amazing.
Because he couldn't literally walk across the street because people would stop him. Hey.
Oh, good point. I hadn't considered that. That's really funny.
I'm like, really? We're getting in the car. He goes, yeah, I really don't walk on the street very often unless I wear something dressed down. And he was in studio regalia,
Okay, well, that gives a little bit of context.
So we went in. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon in an Irish bar, and it's only the alcoholics were there.
Of course. Yeah,
we all sat
that's
at the
time.
bar and we're jolly. And the old guy at the table, you could see him do a double take, like, that's fucking Sting.
Oh, yeah, okay. Directly across, and nobody was like, I'll just walk. I'll meet you over there. How does that sound? No, you get in the car.
A guy like that, he's so musical, and he's at such a level all the time. But then he also has this other life of managing his olive farm in Tuscany, and deciding if he wants to go to the Grand Prix with James Taylor, who left him a message. This kind of stuff that us mortals we really don't have to deal with. And then he's making an album at the same time.
There must be a certain sense of, because you've worked with some very large A+ listers for that matter. There must be a certain song and dance, for lack of a better term, when they arrive and they're coming in the door and, hey, how's it going? I got this set up. And then from that little window of time from their car to the microphone, and then you're like, okay, here we go, guys. The session begins.
Well, as the engineer in a session like that, you don't really speak to them right away. That's not, this producer brings them in, Yeah, we're doing everything's nice. This is Dave. If they even introduce you, you know, this is Dave. But you're at the Pro Tools and at the desk.
Yep.
And with Sting, my very first song, the songs came from he would done them in his home in Tuscany with his band, and then they went to L.A. to cut vocals. They weren't so happy in L.A. The producer came back to New York. So first day, first song, and I'm just seeing he had the materials. I didn't have it, so we put up the first song. And it's got a lot of tracks and there's automation and everything. So, okay, but I got a vocal track ready to go. Boom, we go and record. He goes, stop. I don't want to hear those cellos. Okay, great. Cello, 40 tracks of cellos,
Totally.
all different places.
No groupings. Way to go, Dave. Off. Come on.
I turn them all off. I'm getting a little hyper now.
Yeah.
I press play. They all come back on because they're automated, which I did not realize. Boom, the automation kicks in. They all pop on. No, I don't want to hear those cellos. Sorry. Now I have to turn off the automation on 4 cellos and mute them. Okay, now we're ready to go. So we got over that. And we record for a couple of hours, and then we have some lunch, and then we record a little more. By like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's going, Darlington, I grew up in Birmingham. There's a town called Darlington a few miles out. Is that any relation to you?
Yeah.
And by 2 weeks later, he's playing Fields of Gold on an acoustic with just me and the assistant in the room. We got a royal concert.
Nice.
of unplugged Fields of Gold. Like I had to keep going. This thing playing Fields of Gold on his Gibson. It's like,
you're illustrating a point as building rapport as whether we're drummers, whether we're musicians, whether whoever, right?
The thing is like, I didn't say, well, I know Luther Vandross and he said this and this and this. Or, what did you guys think when you wrote every bit? None of that. It's like,
no,
this is what I do. I know I'm kind of the pilot, like, oh, hi, I'm the pilot. Nice to meet you, but I'll be busy for the next little while.
Right. Oh, that's a good analogy as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome on board. Here we go. I'm totally competent. It's going to be a very smooth ride.
Yeah.
And you need any water or coffee or whatever.
Totally.
That's right. Yeah.
I've got a guy who will do that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, in a studio situation like that, there's minions, right? So Mariah Carey came into a studio called Unique once, and Unique pulled out the red carpet, and they put 3 or 4 minions just in case she wanted 2 different things at 2 different times. They could send one to get the coffee and one to get the croissant.
Yeah.
And so we started recording with just me and the producer and her and the minions. And she said, do we need to have all these people in here? They're taking up all my air conditioning.
Nice. True. And
so
nice.
The producer, who was a very cool guy, said, well, we need him because he has to push record. We can let the other ones go in the lounge, and then she was fine.
Dave, that was a dividing opportunity in the room. If you got let go, that said a lot right there.
Well, somebody's got to push record.
Well, maybe they could have trained the minion in a matter of minutes to do it. Jesus.
Wow.
But there's certain ones, but some people are exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Patti LaBelle comes to mind. The first time I met her, I was like so thrilled because I loved her music. And she said, honey, are you all right? Do you need anything? I'm like,
oh, nice.
Like, are you talking to me? Because I'm the engineer. You're supposed to be. But she was just like a mother figure of like making sure everybody's okay. No, I'll do it again. Sure, we'll do it again. And so I would say most of those big stars are very, very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Because it's very easy for them to come in and like have the royal treatment, as you say.
Yeah, they can be
prepped
late.
up hard, right?
They can be late or they can be flaky and everything. But when they put that horn to their mouth or when they open their mouth to sing, you're like, wow.
Totally.
I mean, talk about, we were talking about having created something during the day, but what about the goosebumps?
Yeah.
There's almost not a week goes by if I'm doing recording.
Yeah.
That something happens that go, wow. The human voice or the soul, the church vocals. I do a lot of gospel stuff. There's a choir that comes to my studio, and they pick out a soprano or an alto. Like, honey, Cece, do some ad libs, and Cece is wailing, and unbelievably beautiful music is coming out of this child's mouth. Like, how do you do that? I don't know how you do that, but I'm happy that you're doing it in front of me. I can tell you that.
Yep.
Well, to harken back to what you were saying about creating something from nothing, basically, I've got some friends who are construction workers, and they work like obviously on buildings around, and I've asked them, like, whenever you drive past a building that you built, there was nothing there, and then suddenly you built a building, and you can tell stories of all the different ways in which it got built to the very end. Every time you drive by it, do you get this little sense of pride? Like, does that happen, Dave? Where like it'll come on the radio, or you put on a song, or some kid on an airplane next to you is like listening to a song. And you're like, oh my god, that's totally something I worked on.
The first thing I ever heard that I had worked on, I didn't even mix it. I just recorded some of it. I was on vacation in St. Thomas, and you get the rent-a-car, and there's only like 2 radio stations, and the song came on. It was by this group called Sky, a soul group from the '80s, and I'm like, "Start of a Romance." I'm like, that's so familiar. Oh, I recorded that hook. I recorded those vocals.
Totally right.
I was like, you have the stair steps in your life. My first credit on an actual label of a record, they spelled my name wrong.
Perfect.
But I still bought one from my mom.
Yes, yes.
It says David Darling, but that's me.
You should contact him now. Do a little bit of an update on that.
No, but if you look on allmusic.com, it's like Dave Darlington, and then there's all the nicknames from all the different credits, because especially the rappers, they like to give you
nicknames.
The moniker, Super Dave or whatever,
But also your name was being faxed to some record label, and I'm sure that it was missing some letters at some point with some bad ink.
Right, and it got misspelled on the credit.
Completely. Wow. Yeah. Is it time, Sean, to pivot into a certain conversation? I think it's time. It's time.
Sure.
Do we need to talk about this world that you're in?
Oh, the games.
Yeah.
Well,
should you talk a bit about Sonic Hedgehog and Mario Plumber?
Well, Mario, I got to because they joined it with Sonic for a couple of rounds. I wasn't really in Mario, but I was in Sonic. There's a Japanese guy who's now an American citizen who is an old dear friend of mine named Atsushi Kosugi. So he shortens his first name to Sushi because all the Americans think that's hysterical.
Right.
So my friend Sushi is coming. Oh, great. Let's eat.
That's brilliant. I'm in.
But he went to Berkeley as a guitarist, I believe, and then he became a producer pretty early on. And he had a studio on East 4th Street near where Tower Records was. So it was great to go down and work in his studio. Met a lot of my peers that I still have friendships with. I met there. And he would bring gigs from Japan, not only game gigs, but J-pop, K-pop, and they would go. We must have New York sound, so they would come from Japan. A lot of times in the '90s, I would get flown over there to work. That's why I have that beach radio. That's a Japanese thing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But one of his clients is Sega.
Okay.
So once I became his sort of mixer guy, anything that came from Sega we would do, and it's sort of like sound design, there's almost like notebooks and notebooks of notes and stuff, and this is this has to have 3 mixes, one without the melody, and each there's probably 100 cues in a game, right? Little sounds, sometimes very short. Right? And then sometimes it's that long song that plays at the end of a level.
Yeah.
And they need different things, or if there's a permutation of that song if you fail.
Yeah.
So they if you know anything about Asian culture, especially Japan, super organized. So one person's job is to make this spreadsheet of what the music's going to be. As the animators are building the game, the music department is building this incredible spreadsheet.
Yep.
And so my friend Sushi was very good at taking the American sort of sensibilities of, whatever, we'll mix it and the Japanese sensibilities of we must have 3 mixes, and blending them together to get the creativity of the Muscle Shoals vibe of the Americans of like, man, let's make some rock and roll. And the strictness of the Asian culture, and he's very good at marrying those two things to make both sides be happy.
Right.
You're hitting it on the head, kind of the topic I wanted to talk about, especially the modernizing over the years of video game music. Because you're right, if it was like, let's say, original Sonic, it's one song that's just playing throughout the entire level and the end, and there's certainly segmental things that happen throughout it. But nowadays, more modern music and video games are progressing as you're going through levels. Instrumentation is coming in, it's coming out. There's a lot of coding that's happening in order for it to be so organic, right?
The Sonic the themes, they spend money on 3 or 4 big moments. I'm talking to symphony orchestras, right? With rock, with the guys that write the stuff. It's a husband and wife that write the stuff, and then they program some of it themselves. But they also, in Japan has master MIDI programmers. That's where karaoke. So they program the nuts off of stuff, and they flip loops in a really cool, weird way. Filter loops and stuff, and then they marry that with symphony. So then my job is to make that all work, live in the same environment, and still be exciting the way a filtered loop is supposed to be exciting, and the way a beautiful string ensemble is supposed to be exciting.
When I think about that, especially your background in particular, and now that I'm privy to, and I'm sorry for my ignorance over all this time, but now that I'm like really privy to your history in video games, there's a huge dissection between doing like rock and polka music, for lack of a better term, and then getting into like 8-bit, bit crushed,
crushed stuff,
super like that type of stuff, right?
Well,
it's a huge juxtaposition, right?
I'm at the very end of the post side of it. They've already worked out the arrangements and everything, and sometimes after it's mixed, they change it on the fly, and we have to go back because they cut out 4 bars or something that they felt. There's a lot of people that have to be satisfied, including the composers and including the producers of the game. It's a big company, right? It's a big pyramid. But we used to record it to if you know what DSD is, it's like a very high quality two-track recorder. Once we had the mixes, we would print them, and they have a very good quality control system. So do you guys know what dither is?
Yep.
So the dither is when the reverb is ringing out. You don't want to hear it stair stepping, so they. So I sent a mix once, and they kept saying, there's something wrong with the reverb at the end, and it was because I hadn't yet dithered it. And they were hearing the at the
resolution
tails, at the end of the big symphonic chord. I had this gigundo Carnegie Hall kind of thing on the end, which they loved.
Right.
They couldn't, and I'm like, what are they talking about? What are they talking about? And finally, when it dawned on me, it was easy to rectify. But I'm like, man. These guys are listening with electron microscope.
Totally.
Like, wow.
There's that's segueing into the responsibility of that brand, though, right? And with all due respect, this isn't just some indie label that's just making something fun.
Big time.
You're very responsible for some
platform, and people know those songs.
I have it tattooed on my body. Like that says a lot. You know what I mean?
I think that's a first for me.
Is it? Oh yeah. I'll get a lot more.
Even by the time Bear McCreary stepping into the game and doing God of War, and now they're winning awards for some of these things.
Completely. There is a spotlight on, especially within video game culture, and that's the culture that I'm deep in. There is a a huge respect and spotlight on sound design for video game. Where back in the day that wasn't necessarily the case, and it was taken for granted. And if we go back to Atari, if we go to Coleco, if we go to Nintendo, there is
now we have immersive.
Dude, 4 voices. You could only use 4 voices back then, and the amount of production that was required was crazy. But to the average person, they didn't get it, right? And now it's like, oh, you only used 128 channels? Boo.
Well, even just the responsibility. I took the Audio Kinetic Wise course and the middleware course, and I mean, man, oh man, that is like. I said to my wife, I'm like, I don't know what rocket science would be like, but this kind of feels
pretty
like
close.
Amazing.
It's just like it's super not even like it's not a DAW, but there's a DAW in there, and it's just understanding like attenuation and like you said, Dave, like when the heart beats fluttering and then it dies, and then there's you know, so you're creating this, so they don't have to program it anymore, but someone who invented this program, and I'm just like, it's just, and I want, obviously, I mean, I think the next level is going to be the two worlds integrating, and I know there are people that are now, you know, starting to emerge. I know Ludwig, who does the Star Wars series, he's a guy that's in both worlds, and and as we go along,
post world, there's a guy named Phil McGowan who's a young mixer. He did Picard.
Okay,
yeah.
So he's got some you should check out his videos. He's takes you through some just how he thinks about the mix and how he organizes it. It's similar to what I was doing in the pop world.
Yeah,
you know, everybody's got groups, and you know, in post you have to deliver individual elements. So he uses reverb, like if the percussion stuff will have its own reverbs, and he won't use those reverbs for anything else.
Anything else?
Whereas you know, in my world, it's kind of the opposite. You put a lot of things into similar reverbs, so they sound like they're
cohesive in a room.
But then you know, then if I got to deliver elements, I have to do them one by one, and he's got these giant mixes that have to send out 16 to 25 stems,
right?
Immersive and stuff. And he's very, very good, very young, and smart as a whip. And I think he's a great mixer. His sound is really, really, really good.
I have to admit, I did some optimization for EA back in early 2000s, and when I think about like file sizes became so important, right?
Oh my God.
So when they were translating from Nintendo to like handheld, or if you're going to Game Boy Advanced, or if you're going to PSP, suddenly the games needed to be audibly, and like file sizes need to be optimized, and it was this guy doing some truncating, but it was like, it was so important. I don't know if that's even a factor now when game sizes are getting so big that maybe the audio doesn't need to be sacrificed in that end, right?
I mean, we were delivering 48K 24 bits to them. Everything was 48 because it was related to animation.
Yeah.
So it was film spec.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe now they're even getting higher in terms of sample rates and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well,
I think
I just downloaded Horizon again just because there was a DLC and it was 110 gigs, and I was like, holy jeez, when did games get so goddamn big?
110 gigs.
110 gigs for that game, and I was like, holy Jesus, I forgot how big that is, but Jesus.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing now, and is understanding the WISE course a bit better, is just computing power, and because what they allocate, there's a program, part of the WISE program is it shows you how much you're eating up and actually what your budget is. And when you start getting into the red, you have to start making cuts, and it's
efficiency.
It's a whole it's going to become a whole, you know, that you're seeing all those
whole discipline
for sure, and like, especially like with the 3D and the virtual and the Dolby Atmos and the you know, experiential world. I mean,
that's the biggest thing of Atmos is the gaming world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people are coming at you from behind, and
it's immersive with VR in particular, right?
Yeah, totally.
And it kind of has to be, because that's where the industry's really going.
Right?
And
isn't
immersiveness, right?
Is it Wave, Dave, that invented the 3D headphone? So when you're
the head track, they call it the head
tracker. Yeah,
when you turn, the music moves with you. But now the AirPods will do that.
Yeah, right.
AirPods Pro.
Gimbals in them.
Yeah. Incredible technology. And I mean, everyone's going to be listening on these primarily. I mean, 99% of the people.
Yeah, I mean, I resisted the AirPods for a long time, but then I got them, and I'm like, okay, they're actually okay.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite thing to listen to music on, but if I want to hear a podcast in the car, it's fantastic.
Totally.
It's fantastic.
Actually, you're segueing perfectly into my next point. Is gear in particular is like, obviously we could do a gear run. What's your gear rundown? What do you have?
Yeah.
But I'm actually more interested in the fact that technology is changing so much.
Yeah.
How do you personally, and I think we all are challenged with this, how do you personally just stay on top of technology?
It's a kind of a peer group thing, You talk to other engineers. I talk to mastering engineers and what's going on, and how now you can't have it so loud because of Spotify, but you still sound loud. How are you doing it?
Right.
And they would say, well, I'm using, the black box, or there's a new AI EQ called Gullfoss. That sort of analyzes the stuff on the fly and takes out harshness and stuff for you.
Right.
So, you know, and you go,
that's
well,
what
do I need that? I don't know. I mean, when CLA vocals came out, I didn't think I needed that either, but
yeah.
I won't say that I haven't used it on some records, you know.
Right.
I asked the same question to my dentist a long time ago. How do you stay on top of, like, are there new pick tools? Are there
Oh my
new
God.
x-rays? Are there
Yeah.
new, and he said the same thing that you did. He said there's a peer of people, there's a group of people, and technology goes up and it becomes industry standard within that group, and then he's got to invest in it because it becomes industry standard, right?
Yeah.
And he's got to educate himself on that angle as well, right?
Well,
Well, and it's exactly.
The staff at Abbey Road Studios in London, they have this beautiful historical studio, but they're moving into the software world.
Yeah.
Because that's how they see their survival. So
totally.
You know, you and one of those guys works very closely with Waves because Waves models a lot of their stuff.
Yes.
Yep.
But he's into, you know, immersive technology and that separation technology that they used on the Get Back movie. And they bought that software called Audio Movers that I was saying would transmit to the phone. That's actually owned by EMI Studios, Abbey Road.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know, everybody's seeing that writing on the wall of, like, you know, we can poo-poo AI and all this stuff. You know, I don't want people to be sending their songs off to the $5 mastering robot.
No.
Yeah.
Right? Because
the old Fiverr. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but you know, there's shoot 'em outs on YouTube of, like, well, the robot came in third.
Totally.
out of 5, you know.
Totally.
I've seen those. It's scary.
You know, but you know, so far there's always been a human that really nailed it the way the guy wanted it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wonder when I'm a big fan of NS10s and I regret getting rid of them many decade ago.
Yeah.
You still got them. At what point do you retire them? At what point do you
well,
look at it and go, well, this is, we're here.
Like old sweatshirt, you know, it's like, you know, you put the hoodie on and you're like,
totally, right?
I'm right there, you know. But I use them with the subwoofer and stuff. So they're only the subwoofer rolls off at like 80, so nothing lower than 80 is going. They're not doing this like they used to do.
Totally.
Right, the subs handling.
They're transparent.
The subs handling all that low stuff. They're working less, you know. So they're and I don't listen loud either.
Yeah. That was a great takeaway, Dave. That you did. You discussed that. You said, you know, you covered about, like, even the first thing I did was I went on Walmart's site and I filtered was the top selling computer speakers or just listening speakers. Yeah. And it was these little Black Widows. And because you said buy the $20 speakers and listen to that, that's the reality of who's going to be listening to this.
Well played.
And
well played.
I'm listening at probably like at least 4 dB less now. Yeah. Just because I'm starting to understand and, like, again, knowing what.
You know what else is interesting about that? If you go back and play old stuff, you know, like, you know, even 80s, 90s, but even go back further and play some bossa nova from the 50s. It sounds good on those little Black Widows. Somehow they figured, you know, they got it right at that point. Yep. I think, you know, if it hadn't been right, it wouldn't go down the radio and we wouldn't know about it. Back in the day, right? It had to be a certain way to come out of the radio the right way to make people excited.
Totally.
I'm challenged with it, and I talk about it at the shop all the time, is like older music. I don't know the right vocabulary for this. Older music through older speakers sound great. Older music through modern speakers sound thin. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, modern music on older speakers don't sound good. Like, it just makes that speaker work so hard, right?
Hard to listen to.
And it sounds good. So there is this gradual, like, gray area that, what are you listening to? If you're putting it on a vinyl record and you're putting on some Doobie Brothers, well, maybe you do want some tuner speakers, right? Or you want to EQ the room a very specific way. But if you're listening to EDM, if you're listening to techno, industrial music, then you might want some modern music that or modern speakers that translates those frequencies properly, right?
I mean, you know, the technology of the low end has been, it's like computers, it's been getting better and better.
Better and better, yeah.
But also mastering levels have been going crazy
and they're not
high.
You know, everybody talks about, now the volume wars are over. I don't agree with that.
I think their volume wars are just heating up.
Says, you know, I listened to somebody else's thing. It was so much louder than mine. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, we got to do it.
You spend any time on Bandcamp and you realize, like, even my wife and I, when we've been trying to mix ours, and I was like, my God, like, we're not even going to compete on Bandcamp here. everything is just like, wow.
There's a reason why in your phone you've got sound check.
Yeah.
That little thing where I don't have it on.
Yeah, but it turns
I'm
out-
better than that, by the way. I don't have a sound check on, but there is sound check for that exact reason, that there's so many different mastering levels of things, right?
Yeah. I think it's good that Spotify and those companies are trying to come up with a bar, but again, it's like, Spotify's minus 14 LUFS, YouTube's minus 13.
They're not even all the same, and
they can't even.
Music for picture is way lower.
Yeah, really,
much lower. Yeah, and but
minus 23 or something.
CDs are supposed to be minus 9, but I mean, I get CDs to sometimes people send me the stuff from the mastering engineer, and they want reference CDs burned.
Yes,
I'm burning them, and I'm looking at the meter, and it's just pinned all the time.
Yeah,
I'm like, that can't be minus 9.
Yeah. Somehow TV shows are like at minus 20, and then commercials are plus 12. So brutal.
You're right, Dave. Like I don't think that loudness wars are even close to being over. I think if anything, we've got more tools now to try and reach that. I mean, I remember the first time I was shown how to make a chocolate bar on a waveform, and I was like, oh, okay. And so like the zero dynamic range. The zero dynamic range all the way across.
Is that what that means? I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
Yeah.
No, like because he's saying the waveform is so flat.
Oh,
it looks like a Hershey bar.
Yeah. There's no dynamic.
Totally.
There's just zero dynamics. It's just everything is on 10. And
that's what
I mean, it's definitely the way of the modern.
There's always those discussions of, don't you miss analog, and why are we making it so loud? It's like, those are valid things over a glass of wine, but right now I'm trying to compete.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I want my client to walk out with their record going, man, that sounds better than anything I ever heard in my life. That's our goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I have found over the years is that a lot more. How do I say this? The music I listen to is a lot of electronic music. I really love electronic music, but mostly because everything is line level. We're not dealing with microphones generally, so everything can sit spatially in its own little pocket,
for sure.
Really beautifully, right?
Yeah.
And it means that you're getting potentially less phase, but also your gain, like your noise floor, is so much more. You're getting so much more.
Yeah,
room,
you have 96
right?
dBs of headroom.
Totally,
so much headroom,
right?
But in that world, there are guys who do. There's a lot of guys that do it, and then there's that few at the top of the pyramid that really, their stuff really sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it that they're doing that's so good? I don't know. It's
I've got a playlist, and it's actually in my phone. It's called Sonically Referenceable. And I've got probably about maybe 15 songs in there, and they rotate out as over all these years.
Yeah.
But anytime something just blows me away in production, in regards to clarity in the bottom end, in particular, just everything, I throw it in there. And anytime I want to like test speakers or like, I'm just like, I put that on. I'm like, yeah, perfect.
Well,
I always reference.
I have the
from
same
those,
thing
right?
for genres. I don't know if I talked about this in the course, but I have no problem being with the top people of the day, right? If I'm doing a wannabe chick that wants to get signed to a label and become the next chick, I'm going, baby, I'm gonna find.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that have that I don't have, and why?
Yep.
And if it's a sultry soul singer, I'm putting on Nora Jones, which sounds gorgeous. And it's only 4 things playing.
Yeah, it has to be
whatever it is,
sure.
and the gospel records are loud, and bright and clear,
Yeah.
and hip hop records are extremely bright and loud,
Completely, They've been getting a lot more production, in particular, which I'm
value,
really liking.
Good sound value.
You should just be an 808 and a guitar and a bass.
No, I mean, starting with
so
Dre,
more,
Dre was the mixer guy that was like, wow, Dre's mixes sound way better than everybody else's.
Completely.
Right?
Far.
But and then there's the EDM guys that the ones that have that sound that are really, really good.
Correct. Yeah.
So if somebody comes into your thing, I got a 4 on the floor and I got an 808 bass line. Okay, let's get something that sounds like that and see what they're doing this week.
But correct. But we also know that music is being played clubs. We know it's a club banger, right?
Yeah.
And nobody's grabbing a glass of cognac and a cigar and putting on some.
No.
Well, let's hear this. you know.
But people do have that playlist that, a lot
Totally.
of people walk around with that kind of a playlist and love it. So
Yeah, right. It's
That's-
gotta be translatable. Yeah.
that is one of the cool things about having so much music out there. It's harder to break through as an artist, but for those of us who consume it, it's nirvana, because we can find anything we want with a couple of clicks.
Oh, yeah, it's just like a smorgasbord of,
You
and I even think too, as I've been releasing, my wife and I are planning on releasing some more music, and we were talking the other night about there's room for someone to create, like there's a vinyl mix, there's a club mix,
Yeah.
they're even like mixing a song for the guy who's got the 16-inch subwoofers in the back of his car. Like, why not?
Why not?
Why not mix it, subwoofer car mix?
Yeah.
Because he or she's going to appreciate that at a level, like, and then you as an artist, like, you're selling your song 4 times.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
One of the things you have to think about when you're making records is, just the way you're into your drums or games, or we're into our art. The guy with those 16-inch woofers in his trunk, that's his game.
That's his
100%.
baby. And he's doing it. He's lying awake at night thinking about how he can make it better.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Actually, Sean, you're going down a road of another thing I was thinking about, was remixes in particular.
Yeah.
Are you cognizant of the fact that nowadays your stems could be sent to other artists to be used and sampled within their music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep. How does that make you feel, I guess, is the question. Yes?
Well, as long as you have a tracer on it, so you get paid.
That, my friend, is the question.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you typically, just in regards to that, are you like, because I don't know the ins and outs of that, does the record label just send the session file to somebody who wants to remix? So that is all the plugins, is the plugins printed to the tracks?
No, usually we take them out. Unless
Cool.
it's partly, my rule of thumb on that is, if it's part of the production,
Yeah.
like it's an echoey thing on like the guitar part on David
signature
Dance.
Yeah.
That you got to print, because it would take 2 hours to make that up again.
Figure
Totally.
that out.
Yeah.
But if it's just a guitar part and you may want to treat it different, just leave it.
You got it.
You got to decide, is it part of the production or not, and whatever it's not, then take it out.
Yeah, if it's signature to the part, then it's got to be left in. But if it's yeah.
But having your stuff sampled, Puffy gives Sting $5,000 a day. It's either it's a day or a week.
Oh, I totally heard that somewhere
You
recently.
can look it up.
Yeah, that's
I might have
right.
I know it's $5,000. It might be a week. It's probably,
It's substantial. It's substantial.
Right.
Yeah.
Sampling.
Because
Other
go
world.
ahead. Sorry, Dave.
I was just going to say, and if that's because he went and got the license, but if there's plenty of hip hop artists who just do it and then put it out, and then 9 times out of 10 nothing happens, so there's no money to get anyway.
No.
But the one guy who blows up,
Yeah.
if he didn't license it first,
Yep.
Yeah.
he has to pay you, or else he has to stop selling playing
So,
the
yeah.
As well as retro. Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, that's a whole other rigmarole of conversation is sampling, which we're certainly seeing with ChatGPT or any AI in regards to artists as well. That's a way deeper conversation. But when you're prideful of something, you certainly want to have people use it if they can, but you want to get paid, brother.
Yes.
You want to get
for
paid.
your efforts. Yeah.
That's right.
Totally.
Holy cow. With all due respect, you've been hanging out with us for a while. How's your percent wise? Are you good?
Oh yeah, I'm fine.
Oh,
We haven't got to John's on Bleecker Street or Stromboli's on Second Avenue.
Here we go, baby. Stromboli's, bro. Okay, well let's hit that pizza.
No, I'm not really an expert, but I've been living here a long time, and New York pizza for me is the best pizza.
The best. Yeah.
It's the worst.
And is there a borough that's any better than the other?
Well,
Dave?
there's what's the place something garden in Brooklyn that everybody talks about. I've actually never been there, but Brooklyn has very good pizza, actually.
Yeah.
I'm all talk. I've never had pizza in New York.
But they, I was here long ago when Ray's, the real original Ray's, was here on 11th.
Oh wow.
6th Avenue and 11th, and you got a knife and a fork with the slice because it was so.
It's so big.
That, my friend, is how you're supposed to eat pizza.
Yeah.
It should be like a lasagna. Except if it's New Orleans style, where you fold ski. If you can fold it.
Yeah, I fold it.
Yeah.
I'm a folder.
If given the opportunity to fold, I'll fold.
I'll fold halfway through. Because I want to see
first triangle, right?
Yeah, I want to see the tip sag isn't even if the tip sag's there, I'll fold it immediately. But
the tip sag is interesting to me. Oh my god, the tip sag.
But I mean, a good pizziolo, he or she won't have a tip sag. It'll be strong.
Yeah, it's crispy.
Oh my god,
you won't have to worry about it.
And you call it squares. Right?
Squares, right?
A slice or a square.
Square, yeah, that's right.
And the corner square is the best.
Yeah.
Well, obviously. But hold on, backpedal here, because I'm not a crustman. I'm not a fan of crusts.
Okay,
I'll eat to the crust and then give the crust to my wife.
Wow, really?
She loves the crust. Am I a hero? Yes, obviously. But I just genuinely not a big fan of crust. I believe
you have better dough then.
Here's the deal, though. The crust for me is wasted space in my belly for another slice of pizza.
That's true.
Right? The density of a crust.
Whenever you move somewhere, the first things you need to find the good pizza and the good sushi, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to tell you where that stuff is in your new neighborhood.
Wait, what did you say? Kluski? Sushi. Oh my god, Kluski. Sorry, I'm half Polish. My wife. It's Kluski. But sushi, 100%. You're right. Yeah. Sushi and pizza.
Where's the good fresh sushi spot, and who's got the best pizza?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. The city I moved to has. I don't care if I say it out loud. It has garbage, both of those things. So.
Oh no,
you're landlocked. That's why.
Yeah, I got to move back to Vancouver. Is kind of the deal, I guess.
Where do you live now?
I'm in Kelowna.
I don't know where that is.
Perfect. That answers that question.
Just is north of Vancouver, northeast of Vancouver.
Oh,
probably. It's probably right, like literally right above Tacoma, Washington. By about
I know where that is.
True. Yeah. We lived in Vancouver for 20 years, and then we just moved here a year ago. And
was that just to get away from it all, or what was it?
Yeah, the pressure of. Just things have changed. Just inflation has changed. It's being in the city. We're older. I used to gig a lot, and living downtown there was lots of clubs. There was lots of recording studios. There was lots of stuff happening. And over the past 2 or 3 years, I don't know if you know, but there was a pandemic.
Yes.
That's kind of faded out. So less gigs, less recording studios. So
yes, absolutely.
It was just time for a bit of a change, especially as a musician. Going to recording studios and doing sessions really faded out. You know what I mean?
Of course. Well, there was the whole year where nobody even came out of the house, and then the second year was like, oh, it's over. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
There were tons of musicians from the New York City area that moved as near as they could, but far. Because of it's less expensive and it's less pressure, and your kids go to decent public school and all that stuff.
I think you're right. I lived in Toronto for years as well, and that's kind of the same deal. Is that being in a major metropolis of studios and bustling of music?
Oh man, I was in some great studios. I don't really remember their names. Do you know a group called the Nylons?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
for sure.
I did some albums with them in this beautiful studio in Toronto.
Yeah, for sure.
Where were they?
Yeah,
now that's eating at me. And I guess if we're doing a segue, that really got into I'm hearing so much more programmed drums now, so much more. And if anything, over the past few years, it's given every singer-songwriter the opportunity to have the autonomy to do every instrument they want without having to hire this guy to show up. Right?
One of the guys that rents space where I am, it was jingle voiceover for advertising.
Yeah.
So they could do 15 minutes will save you 15% with guy.
Totally. Yeah.
Twice a month, and everybody makes their nut. So as soon as the pandemic hit, the guy who said that went out and bought a USB microphone.
Yes.
Honey, keep the baby quiet. I'm doing micro.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
There's never been more voiceover actors, work from home opportunities, home studios, right? A lot of Scarlett single channel solo interfaces flying off the shelf. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. A couple $100 and you're set. You're good.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I certainly remember, and I'm sure you do too, where I had a studio for a very long time, and the moment the M-Box Mini came out, I was
Yeah,
just like,
it's been a constant,
holy cow! It's now affordable for anybody to have something at home.
Oh God, yeah.
What's the value in having a recording studio
yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
You actually need to weigh that. It's actually part of a conversation where back
Well,
in the
yeah,
day
and
it
having a
wasn't.
big studio like with a drum room and a piano, the overhead of that, the piano itself is $100,000, and then two out of the five piano players that come, oh, I don't know if I like this piano.
Totally.
Action's a little stiff.
Yeah, yeah. I'm used to a Steinway. This whole Yamaha thing isn't working
Yeah.
for me.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, yeah, I learned early on, that it's not worth being in that. I mean, unless you have unlimited money or you're booking, Universal and Sony all day long every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't want to hear that from anybody about you don't like my piano, so I don't have a piano.
Yeah.
That's a smart move.
No,
That's smart.
exactly.
Just
Yeah.
have a good plug-in.
Yeah.
There's certainly back in the day, we're going to do a lot of that. Back in the day, singer-songwriters would program drums with the intent of, well, I'll get an actual
Replacing
drummer.
it. Yeah.
It's a good scratch
Right.
track. We're good to go. Here's PJ. Here's the design. I'll see you in the studio next week.
Yeah.
But now it's like, no, they actually sound really good, and you could program them great, or there's less requirements for it, and people are just
Well, and
releasing it
people
to win.
are learning how to make it sound somewhat human.
Totally right.
You know.
It is humanized. So we had a conversation when I worked at Roland that to be relevant means, as a drummer, it was just a term we used all the time. Relevant is that it meant that as a drummer you needed to know how to drum, sure, but how to play to a click track,
Absolutely.
how to read music, obviously, how to write charts. And I also truly believed that, much like a Jedi, where you've got to create your own lightsaber as a rite of passage to become a Jedi, maybe as a drummer, you need to build your own drum in order to be like, to understand the tunings of and the creation and the engineering that you're playing, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect a flautist to do that, but on the other hand, as a drummer, maybe that's a rite of passage, right?
Think about a timpani player in the symphony, right? Like calfskin heads. I just found out recently that those heads you have to change them every 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months?
Yeah, they don't even last that long.
No, they're not. And I had an opportunity before Vic Firth passed away to talk to him, because he was a principal timpanist in
New York.
Yeah, New York. Yeah, and he said that the hardest instrument to play is the timpani drum, because it literally doesn't work unless you're pulling the sound out of it. It's not like a tom where he said you can hit it and there's all these. It's shaped as you have to convince the drum to release. And he said, like, that's the first year of a timpanist, is the
pulling the sound out.
Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly when I studied with Dom Famulero a little bit, and around the whole finger technique, like the German grip, the French grip, and that's why the point to the grips was the most, was the fulcrum on the fingers, and manipulating the stick to actually help the drum start, because it's just a big membrane, right? It's actually to say it's a tuning the drum. Well, that's actually not true. You're tympanic tensioning the drum. Yeah, there's actually no note there, or there is, but you're not trying to actually achieve it.
Right.
No, but I'm sure Dave can speak probably on behalf of like different techniques of drummers that he's recorded, whether they're burying the beater or they're different techniques, right?
Yeah, everybody has their own style and voice,
Yeah.
Underhand, overhand, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And to me, as long as, like, again, is circling back to what we've been saying, is you can bury the beater, play jazz grip, play how Kenny plays, or play, as long as it sounds at the end of the day, like Liberty. I remember Lib used to talk about recording some of the Billy Joel's albums, and that, I mean, it was just like, he said, he says, I can count on less fingers how many things we didn't put on floor toms or underneath floor to get it sounds that they were after, because it was a complete experimentation of, which is, you think about it, it's like, it doesn't sound musical, but that is very musical. It's
Sean Pelton had these things that was made out of like a kerchief, and it had a bean bag in one corner of it, and you hung it and it had a little loop that hung on the tuning peg of the floor tom. So you could put a tea towel on instead, or you could put a bean bag on, or both.
Yeah.
I have a wallet that goes
Really
on my
smart
snare.
idea.
Yeah, I've got a
Very
wallet that I
smart.
put on my snare, but I always joke that my snare sounds better when the wallet's full of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we need a little more damping.
Yeah.
The snare, no. Who's got hundreds? They sound the best with hundreds. Yeah,
Abe
Jesus.
Laboriel Jr. Live with Paul during, I think it's
Amazing.
yeah, it's during Hello Goodbye, or I forget the name of that song.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he actually, and he talks about this is during the sound check, they'd never been able to get that tom sound like that Ringo got. And Abe's big thing was that's a song he said, I don't want to sound like me, I want to sound like Ringo on that song. And so he ends up using we'll have to explain that to Dave.
We're gonna have to explain.
Abe ends up using on the toms, he uses upside down drum heads because they act as a physical gate. So that just by virtue of the upside down inverted drum head, because a drum head is rounded. You put it upside down on a drum, which has got a ring, and it stays in place. And the two mylar heads sympathetically vibrate, and once you've struck it, the high head on top vibrates and falls back, acts like a gate.
That's like big fat snare drum now, right?
And just really quick, which is what they had apparently on the recording. And Abe said, that's the only thing I've been able to do to get as close to that sound as I possibly could.
Do you think that's what Ringo was doing?
I don't think so. I doubt it. I think
they had like hand towels,
hand towels, and I think also too, like a lot of people don't consider the fact that Ringo's actually left-handed. So Ringo was always playing, not like even that's why Come Together is such an unusual fill, because he rolls up the tom. That's not, you wouldn't think.
And he leads left,
and he leads left. So that's again. So now your strong hand, rather than going down quickly, is now it's a very interesting kinetic sort of experiment, because if Ringo was right-handed, would he have sounded the same? Right?
No, definitely not.
Probably it's all those circumstances. Back in college in recording school, we had to mimic. We were given a few songs in groups, and we needed to do exactly what we're doing right now. We needed to investigate what mics they used, what gear they used, and we needed to be able to replicate it. Get musicians that could play the parts properly, find a singer that could sing the parts properly enough that the professor, Jack Richardson, could A-B it. And we try to get as close as we could to it.
Interesting.
Right? That's really engineering. What we're talking about right now is,
it's not as easy.
How do these guys do it, right? Yeah.
It's not easy, right?
Yeah. No, but it does spark conversation. The same way you look at a building and there's something architecturally interesting. How did they do that?
Yeah.
Let's have a discussion about it. The same with audio, right?
That's a great way to teach. That's a great way to teach.
Right?
Yeah.
Because who wouldn't be excited to try that, right? Oh, I think I can do it.
Absolutely. And you do mention it in the course, Dave, that because you said if you were looking, I forget which song. I was maybe the female track that you had played, and you said, like, I really don't mind A-being this with the current pop divas of the day to get.
Oh yeah, I thought I had brought that, but I'm really kind of shy about that.
No, and even like, again, that's why I mentioned the humility, humbleness is that you've used Chris's plugins, you've used all even the guys you interviewed throughout the I ended up purchasing Jack's compressor based on the conversation you had with him, and now even just like understanding now compression a lot better than what I used to. And again, hindsight's 2020, listening to some of the stuff that I've done, thinking, I'll throw it, see what this does. I love that. I'll see what this does.
Right.
And now watching your course and understanding, if you're going to use it, you got to know what it's for.
Well, and also compression, you talk to any experienced engineer and they'll tell you, it took me a long time to understand compression, but then, the musicians will be in the studio while you're mixing. They go, are you compressing me or not? I'm like, dude,
you don't know what you're talking about.
You even know what that means?
LA2A professional.
Would you do that to your heart surgeon? Hey man, are you gonna use the black thread or the white thread?
What do you think? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Can I do a bit of a segue here, because I'm genuinely interested in this? Tell me a bit about Free Willy.
Oh, Free Willy was was being produced while I was working on a group, a guy's singing group, and
Yeah.
so we had 7 or 8 songs going on the album, and we pitched them to. They just needed songs to fill in the. They needed songs to fill in the in between scenes. So it was a kind of a management thing. Hey man, we got your song on a song called "How Can You Leave Me Now," and you know I didn't have anything to do with the movie, but they were making the movie, and that's epic because of Jackson. And
it's a good movie.
We got a song in the movie.
Underrated movie.
Funky. The group is called Funky Poets. There were some brothers and a cousin, and they were kind of we were in the 90s, but they were digging the 70s. So they were writing stuff kind of like Earth, Wind and Fire-ish kind of stuff. And
what were they called? Sorry, Funky.
Bringing that to that generation. They were very young in the 90s. And I thought the record was great, but it didn't really do commercially well. But we did get the song on Free Willy.
There it is. There, yeah. How can you leave me now? Yeah.
How can you leave me now? Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. We talk on my other stream. We've been known to bring up the topic of Free Willy fairly often because it's a very underrated film. Underrated film.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Do we want to wind down a bit here, Sean?
Sure.
Yeah. How you feeling, Dave?
I'm tired, but I feel like we had a great conversation.
Dude, you're a gem, I think people say. Do people say that?
It's fun. I mean, you know, it's like being in a band, just doing this, right? Of like we have like this common ground of stuff that we like, and it might not even be the same kind of music, but somewhere along the line, some kind of music lit that lighter under your butt, and you were like, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right.
The question I would have, and somebody brought it up to me earlier, like months ago, would young PJ be happy of the PJ that I'm right now? You know what I mean? Am I doing cool shit that young PJ would look at me and go, man, you're doing cool shit?
Yeah.
Dave, would young Dave look at you and go, man, you do cool shit?
I look back. I don't really have any regret. I don't have regrets. I have a few. No, I don't actually.
Yeah.
You know, like I did bands, you know, and I've been on tours and I rode on buses and everything. And now I'm here, and I like what I do, and you know, and people seem to like it, and people have always seemed to like it wherever I was at whatever level I was on. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then when I had a little garage band. We got some gigs. We didn't become the Beatles or anything, but we got some gigs and we had fun, and we moved on to the next thing. And I could never have predicted in 1,000 million years that this is how I would be at this age.
Right.
But then when I look back, I go, well, how did I do that either? You know?
Right.
How I played in an orchestra? How did I do that? I just decided that's what I wanted to do, and I did it. And I don't really know how I ended up getting into studios. I remember it was a slow osmosis kind of a thing, and then there was some serious lucky breaks along the way.
Yeah.
I have a son who's just about to graduate from film school, and you know he's at that point of like, okay, now I'm done with school, but I got to go out and do my thing, and I'm like, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
You know, because you love it. It lights your fire. So you know.
Absolutely.
However, you can't predict how it's gonna work out, but it's going to work.
If there's any lesson that we took from tonight, you've really illustrated it. Is you're not using templates before a session. You're letting things organically happen as they happen. Don't try to make predetermined decisions ahead of time.
Right.
Make it in the moment. And this might sound cheesy, but Dave, it sounds like you've engineered your life.
Well, not by design, but by fortune, by luck.
Totally right. Yeah, you've let everything fall the way it has, and you've and you should be really proud of the mix you've done of your life up until this point.
Well, thanks, man. I kind of remember thinking about, you know, this career path is sort of like water finding its way downhill. You know, it's gonna the path that you end up on is because you did something that worked. You know, and you didn't go the other way because that didn't work for whatever reason. You know. Yeah.
No heuristics.
Yeah, my thing is, you know, just can you do this? Yes.
Yep.
Have you ever done it before? That doesn't matter. I can do it.
When you reference Keith Moon. I mean, when he met the Who, Keith had never picked up a set of sticks in his life.
There you go. Yeah.
And look what happened.
And look what happened.
I love it.
Yeah.
Have you
Okay.
ever seen? You have the multi-track of "Won't Get Fooled Again"?
No.
No.
Because you know
I
the
would love
drum
Yeah.
break after the
Yeah.
breakdown. You know that's
Yeah.
like, isolated. You can actually really.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
I
The
really enjoyed
madness.
when those
That's a
showed
Glenn.
up.
That's a Glenn Johns recording with the 3 mics, the weird mic
Right.
on tom.
Wow. Wow.
It sounds killing.
Oh, I know. And just yeah. Wow.
And then the scream. I saw that show live actually. So they came on and they have these big Hollywood, like the searchlights from the opening night
Yeah, yeah.
behind them, pointing out at the audience, and they don't go on the whole show. And they go everything Tommy did to do, and they close with "Won't Get Fooled Again," and then
Oh my God.
yeah, and the searchlights come on at that point, but they're on you and the audience, so
Blinding.
you feel like your face is melting.
Totally. But the fact that you noticed it is hilarious.
And the scream, the scream, and Townsend is sliding across the stage on his knees. You've seen video.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it's like, oh my God.
I'm trying to remember what band I saw, but we were in the audience, and directly behind us was obviously a confetti machine.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm waiting for this thing to go off behind us, and I don't know when it's going to be. And then I might have been Imagine Dragons, or it might have been some band.
if it was McCartney, it's "Live and Let Die."
Perfect, exactly. But I'm looking at it going, you only get one shot. This is only happening once throughout the entire show.
Yeah.
And somebody set this up, and I don't know when it's going to happen. And sure enough, during the encore, it's
Damn.
like the single comes in and pop, it happens. And I was like, there it is. That's the only one I was waiting for the whole show.
Yeah.
A little behind the scenes look.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
goodness.
find it so ironic though that like the bands of today are less exciting to watch, but they have the better sound gear than the bands of yesteryear, which were so
True.
exciting to watch and didn't have half of the sound gear that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean it's a constant evolution, right? The touring
Yeah.
sound thing, man.
Yeah, my buddy Ed, he's actually a representative for Coast Music, and he saw Zeppelin in Winnipeg, one of the only stops in Canada they did that year, and
Yeah.
he said, it was awesome to hear or see, but he goes, the sound was awful. He's like,
Wow.
the sound was horrible. He's like, the band was good. I'm not saying they were bad, but he said like, the sound that there
wasn't no gear, right? They had
it was Winnipeg.
No pink noise 2 hours ahead of time.
Close to New York for backline stuff. They weren't close to Toronto. He's like they put together what they had in Winnipeg, and it was like, he said it wasn't that great.
Bummer.
So total bummer. Yeah.
Well, okay, let's close her down here, Dave. Hopefully we talked about some cool stuff tonight. We talked about pizza. We talked about mixing. We talked about Sonic the Hedgehog. You beat me to it. It's Sonic the Hedgehog. But I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes tonight. Thank you so much. But I took a lot of notes. I learned a lot tonight, man. Thank you so much. You're a gem, but you're a really cool guy. So and you've done cool things in your life.
You guys too. It was really a blast. Like we didn't know each other a few hours ago, and now we're drinking buddies.
Totally, dude. Yeah, that's exactly the way it works. Well, Sean and I have a deal that we talked about it before. We just want to hang out with cool people. That's all we want to do. And if it means that,
short, we only want to hang out with cool people.
Totally.
Yeah.
And if the moment things become interview, like things get a little stale. We just want to hang out and talk pizza.
No, it was totally fun.
Things, right?
Really a blast.
Oh, you're awesome, Dave.
I've left Dave's web address in the chat notes here. So if anyone's interested, look him up. His website, davedarlington.com.
Make sure you go to the picture gallery at the bottom and see me at my senior prom with my American flag shirt.
Oh, good Lord. There's actually some good photos here, dude. This is really good.
Great photos.
Yeah.
But I highly suggest to if you can go through and take his demo to master course if you're at all interested in learning about sound, and as a drummer, as a musician overall, you should know more about sound than I think most of us do. I highly recommend it, even as it's just a good way to understand even maybe what you don't know. Which is a good place to start from. So I'm just so humbled to be in your presence, Dave. And like I said,
thanks, guys. It's been really fun. We had a ball.
I wasn't this nervous talking to Cobham. So
there we go. Dave. Dave, to me, you were a big nobody. There we go. Do you want to give Dave the final word, and then you can press the old slate?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Dave, we got a deal on my other live stream that because I don't know how to, like, neither of us know how to shut up. We always give our guests the final word to end the stream. So we're going to give you the final word in a moment. But Sean, is there any notes? Is there anything we're doing anytime soon? Stuff's on the horizon. We're doing cool stuff.
We're gonna splice and dice some of this stuff up and then send it out because there's some really good gems in here. I'm
cool.
Nuggets.
Like more studying I got to be doing.
Nuggets. Okay.
Yeah.
Dave's a nugget master today. I love it.
Yep, nugget master.
Okay. Well, Sean, it's been a pleasure as always. Dave, you're rad. You're a cool guy.
Thank you so much,
Dave, give us any final word, advice, guidance, funny word, joke, anything you want.
Yeah,
Give us some words.
I would say just keep learning. Just be open to keep learning. You know, no matter how old you are, how advanced you feel you are in your career, there's something you can learn about it to better your situation. So just be open.
Thanks, dude.